The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
You think you know reviews? You don't know Jack! Rob rolling deep with the facts, dropping hot takes, no time to relax. Breaking down films with a verbal suplex, killing your faves with a Radulich flex. Winfree stats hit like a steel chair, cold calculated, he don't play fair. Podcast renegades, uncaged and unclean, running the game like a well-oiled machine. Time to review and wreck your scene. Radulich and Winfree, the all-tots team. Time to review and wreck your scene. Radulich and Winfree, the all-tots team.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
Go elsewhere.
3 words.
No, elsewhere is 1 word.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, welcome to the special edition of the IndySiders. Harry Broadhurst and I are the IndySiders. We are the Heartbreak Kid, Mark Radulich, and Big Sexy Harry Broadhurst. But he's not here tonight, so I'm with a different tag team partner, and that is my partner in degeneration. Ladies and gentlemen, the game, the cerebral assassin, Mr. McMahon Helmsley, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
Well, if that were the case, I would have just booked the most unsatisfying WrestleMania of the last 2 decades, and boy, is that saying something.
Did you really, I know I kind of, kid's the wrong word. I know I poked at you earlier when you kvetched in the group chat. Did you really not care for this WrestleMania at all?
We'll go over it.
We will.
It was not universally bad. Okay.
That's it's a more fair thing than you said in the group chat.
I said it was. That's because I was joking, riffing off of us talking about garbage in general.
It's hard to tell without. That's why I don't respond anymore in the group chat, because I don't know how serious you or some of the other people are, because you're missing this context. So a lot of times I'll just see something in the group chat. I'm like, I'm not responding to this. I'll wait to deal with you in person. In person.
Yeah, as close as we get to it.
So now that I know that you're not being completely grumpy face, so that's what we're talking about tonight. Robert and I are going to talk. We're taking a break from Damn You Hollywood tonight to talk WrestleMania 41. Because I am a slave to structure, this is not Damn You Hollywood. This is an offshoot of the normal IndySiders thing that I do with Harry. Just as a matter of course, I initially picked this as a WrestleMania weekend, but I don't know what you saw, what you didn't see, and I didn't want to necessarily hold us both to that. So let's just kind of do some house cleaning, housekeeping. I saw the SmackDown Go Home show. I don't ever watch Raw anymore. I watch the clips on YouTube, and only of the segments I care about.
That is a reasonable way to engage with this very silly entertainment form.
And that's right. And you had to have watched SmackDown because you cover it. That's what you're.
I do, and I did, and it was 3 hours of pain. That was a very poor Go Home show, even by Go Home show standards. If you want my full detailed segment by segment discussion of that, it's in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Go give it a read if you're so inclined. People disagreed with me about that one, which is fine. But the fact that we decided on this show to have the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and then dovetail that into a 6-man tag between Chad Gable and the Creed brothers, who are just moderately above Ridge Holland for me, and people I think are good, like safe workers. And Rey Mysterio, Rey Fenix, and Dragon Lee, when Rey Mysterio has a match on WrestleMania literally the next day, and then they manage to injure Rey Mysterio.
No,
because some
at
idiot decided this was a good idea.
Rey Mysterio, no luck at all. So I watched SmackDown with my kids and my girlfriend, and didn't make it. I specifically wanted to watch to see what the go home segment was between Cody and John, and
That's
I talked
fine.
about
The best thing on the show.
I talked about this with Harry, and I kind of want to get your take on it. Honestly, the two main events have the two best storylines going. Had the two best storylines going in wrestling. I was way invested in the John Cena heel turn, and I think all the stuff he did with Cody with an asterisk was golden. I knew we were in trouble the second time Cody hit him with the crossroads, and I thought,
Oh, dude,
all right,
Cena was never losing this match.
well,
ever.
I'm allowed to think what I think, and up to that point, I thought Cody might have had a chance. Then he hit him with the second crossroads for a second week in a row, and I went, never mind, we're done here. John Cena, LOL.
Yeah, there was that. I'm going to disagree with you slightly on this first main event, the Cody, Roman, Seth thing, but that's me, and we'll talk about it when we get to that match, because my disillusionment with everything related to that is why I rate that match so poorly. It's a large part of why I rate that match poorly.
I don't remember anything else that happened on SmackDown. Like I said,
I can go over it briefly off the top of my head from my memory if you
I was gonna say, I've been following on the TikTok clips or YouTube clips all the stuff with Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins, and I jokingly said when they did the the favor is you're gonna come out with me at WrestleMania instead of Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns said tell him no, and Paul Heyman said no, which has become like the most like used sound on TikTok for a week. It's
my
so
tribal
funny.
chief, I can't do that.
I said John Cena going,
what do we get?
What do we get? You get nothing. That became the most memed thing on TikTok until no, my tribal chief, I can't do that.
Okay.
But I said at the time, and this bears repeating, is that you always go back to your toxic ex. Like there's Roman Reigns and there's pretty little girl Paul Heyman, and Roman Reigns like, I've been good to you, I've treated you well. There's no reason for you to do this, and he says, but I love him, and runs back to CM Punk.
Well, and we'll get to that in a minute. So
yeah.
SmackDown opened with Seth Rollins doing the most AI-generated version of a CM Punk pipe bomb promo I've heard in a while, and I've heard a lot of them, by the way.
So my son had to ask me, because again, my son's not. I mean, he's 11 years old, which means he was at least tacitly aware of the pipe bomb when it happened, because we were watching wrestling at the time. But
no, dude, your son might not have been born when that happened.
Okay, well, while I tell my story, you look it up real quick. So he does. So he may, at this point, he doesn't know if he was either born or not born yet, but still too young to have been aware of the pipe bomb.
Yeah. Okay. June 27th, 2011.
Okay, so my daughter was born. My son won't come around until 2014. In any case, so he has no idea about the pipe bomb. He has no idea why CM Punk sat crisscross applesauce on the top of the stage.
Because we can't say Indian style anymore.
No, we can't. In any case, so the point, if you'd let me get through my story, my stories are 2 minutes, but they're 20 minutes because of all the interruptions.
Sorry.
So you're right. Seth Rollins, who my son thinks is the douchiest wrestler since the Young Bucks.
Accurate.
Comes out, sits crisscross applesauce, and does his promo. And my son looks at me and he's like, "What the fuck is he doing? Why is he sitting in the middle of the ring? Is he supposed to be standing and moving around and be energetic?" And I'm like, "Son, many years ago, CM Punk, made many dorks wet their pants by saying a pre-scripted promo that sounded like a shoot at the top of the stage, and he sat crisscross applesauce when he did it." He was like, "Oh." And he looked at me, and he looked at the TV, and he looked at my girlfriend, and he looked back at me, and he looked down at the floor, and he looked up again, and he said, "Father?" I said, "Yes, son." He called me father, and I said, "Yes, son." He says, "Father, I hate wrestling." And I said, that is the right answer.
Okay, we're on a wrestling review show. Let me state one of my premises up front.
This is Damn You Hollywood with the lucha mask on.
Yes, we are El Grande Americano over here from the Gulf of America with a yellow filter over our entrance. Okay, just real briefly, professional wrestling is dumb as hell. Now, you can still like it. You can enjoy it. I do on occasion. I know what I like about the genre. When I say it's dumb, people think that I'm impugning them if they enjoy it. I'm not. I'm making a statement about the medium. This is a dumb thing, which you can love passionately and spend all your money on. And God bless, I am not here to cast aspersions on you for that. Let's have a little bit of clarity and self-awareness about what we're doing here. That's all I ask. It's too much for a lot of fans, but
I know the phrase "it's like a soap opera for men" gets thrown around. I said it's more of a stage play that's parading around as combat sports. That's really all that it is. But I'll tell you, just to piggyback on that, and then we can move on with the show. I'm 100% behind Robert. Normally, I'm here to kind of humanize him for the rest of the humans. Like, you can't say that, Robert. You'll run off the normies. But there have been times I've hated wrestling because I've hated who was running the show, who was writing the stories, and I felt like it's so funny how ahead of the curve wrestling has always been because they hated the fans before Hollywood hated the fans.
That's true.
Like there was a period of time where it seemed like the people running WWE actively hated its own fan base and did everything they could to piss them off. And I remember that kind of thing sending me into an apoplectic fucking seizure. Back when I think I was doing the Casual Heroes, and I don't remember if it was about CM Punk or Brock Lesnar or both. But I remember
probably both.
Yeah, but I remember like losing my fucking shit with Chris Evans about it. On the other hand, when Daniel Bryan won the title at WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans, I cried like my third child had been born. You know, there are times it has brought me great joy. There has times it's brought me great anger. But most of the time, this night being one of those nights, I'm mostly meh. So moving on.
So again, we open with Seth Rollins doing that. Then we get the Battle Royal, which Carmelo Hayes wins, and that's an interesting choice. Not a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
That is a meaningless thing to win these days, and I wish they'd attach something valuable to it. They
seem to like Carmelo Hayes, so they need him to win while they sort everything else out.
Well, they do the Andre every year.
Yeah.
I just think they need something attached to it. I'm not talking major. Like, you win that, you get into the Money in the Bank ladder match. Like, something small.
That seems fair. Or maybe, like, you get a title shot the next night on Raw after WrestleMania. Something along those lines.
That's a bit much. But that's a bit much to give away on free TV. If you're going to do, like...
90% of the time, the night after WrestleMania involves either a furthering of whatever the main WrestleMania main event was or something new, but they can't go fully into something new because they have to get to something new in time for the next pay-per-view. So the night after Raw, if you want to have Carmelo Hayes take on John Cena, just to do it, it's not the world. It's not the end of the world. I'm not saying your idea is a bad one either. We can both have good ideas. I'm just saying there are more than one good idea. So
then there's that. We get, 3 hours is too much for SmackDown. They don't have 3 hours of material, and this has been a complaint I've had for a while about that.
I didn't realize it was 3 hours. I do realize I passed out. I didn't make it to Cody Rhodes versus John Cena.
Look, one of the things here is after Chad Gable gets eliminated, El Grande Americano, which is Chad Gable in a luchador mask, comes out and eliminates Rey Fenix, who is, awesome. So he and the Creed brothers make fun of Rey Fenix in the back. Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee show up, and we get our match for later. We get Chelsea Green and Zelina Vega getting a redo from the previous week when they botched the finish. Chelsea Green literally did not get back into the ring before the 10 count and wasn't supposed to be counted out.
In Chelsea Green's defense, she's awfully pretty. Just keep going.
In Chelsea Green's defense, she's one of 3 women on the SmackDown roster allowed to have personality, so she's over like Rover. Sure. That's what she's got going for. hey, come fight Zelina Vega. She's nice. Everybody likes her. And like, no, they don't. They just would rather cheer Chelsea because she has personality.
It helps. Personality goes a long way.
So that happens. We get split. We get like separate interview segments with Wade Barrett sitting down with Poochie and then Tiffany Stratton, neither of which go very well because Charlotte Flair somehow can't actually like come across as a human being. And that's not a shot at her looks.
I was going to say, Charlotte Flair, between the work that she's gotten done, the weight that she's lost, and age, looks like she was generated by AI.
I wasn't joking when I said she looks unhealthy when she came back this last time.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you when I got a good look at her.
So there was that. Again, there was the 6-man tag where Rey Mysterio got injured because we're idiots. We started a match between LA Knight and Solo Sikoa. That turned into a tag match with LA Knight and LA Knight and Braun Strowman against Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu because this was Attitude Era booking, and I hate it. But not booking, Attitude Era show design, and I really hate that. Booking, I'm a little bit more iffy on. So that happened. Randy Orton cut a brief promo. It was a weak show, and then it closed with Cody and Cena having a battle of promos. That, again, is actually pretty good. Cena and Cody actually work pretty well together on the mic. More in the ring later. And Cody stands tall, and that was kind of it. We're going to get Aleister Black coming back this coming Friday because nothing says we believe in you like the SmackDown after Mania for your re-debut.
I liked everything that John Cena had to say. I think his strongest stuff was the very first promo he did.
Yeah,
it
got a little weak. It got weaker week to week after that.
Yeah, starting off with, I've been in a toxic relationship with the fans. You people have been awful to me. I don't want to get into my own stuff, but I felt like John Cena was speaking for me. And the following week when he was like, when it kind of transitioned, because when he was doing basically the Die Rocky Die speech, it was good stuff. When he kind of switched to my heel character is I'm here to ruin wrestling, it's very meta, and I like it. However, now it's a gimmick. You know what I mean? Like when he came out and said, I did everything for all of you. I jumped through every hoop. I took your abuse and smiled. And I don't need to do that anymore. I have been accepted elsewhere. I don't need to keep doing this. I'm breaking up with you, and I'm going to take the title and ruin wrestling. I was like, that felt like the Nation of Domination Rocky speech. That felt like, King Dewey. It felt very real. Everything else after that felt like a scripted wrestling promo, which is fine. John Cena does scripted wrestling promos very well, and his gimmick of I'm the wrestling killer is just fine. We've also seen it before. See Mick Foley's King Dewey post character.
And unfortunately, look, what I wanted, I'll save that for after we talk about the matches because I want to talk about what I wanted after WrestleMania. And then we'll talk about what we're going to get because Raw is airing as we record this and the clips are coming up. So I've seen a handful of them, including the big one about what's next in the aftermath of the main event.
It's Orton Cena 8,050 fucking 2 at Backlash. Great advertisement for me to not watch Backlash. I don't have my kids that night. I don't need to watch it. In any case, did you watch any of the Hall of Fame? Because I haven't. Sometimes the Hall of Fame, some stuff comes out of it, like somebody gives a really good speech or it's something worth going back and watching. I have not. I don't know. Probably the last great Hall of Fame that I paid any attention to was the one that Scott Hall was on.
That one was pretty good. The one where Heyman got inducted was pretty good.
Yeah, I want to say I didn't watch the whole Hall of Fame. I just watched Heyman's speech, and his speech was fantastic.
If you want to watch it, you can watch it. I don't think they're bad, but I didn't watch that one. It was Friday.
Now? Now they're inducting matches. Are we just out of people?
No, we're not out of people, but this is a thing that kind of carrying over from the UFC because the UFC inducts fights into their Hall of Fame.
But them I could see being out of people. So, to keep this Hall
they're
of
not
Fame,
even. No, the UFC's not even close to out of people. They've been doing
people that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Not even close to being out.
Okay, you're the expert.
Dude,
all right.
George St. Pierre is not in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, you shit because he doesn't want to be, or because they just haven't gotten to him yet?
Because they haven't done him yet.
Wow, that's
Like,
actually
again,
shocking.
They do like 4 people and 1 match per year. That's it.
Okay.
And they only instituted that a handful of years ago. They actually have a lot of material to get through.
Did you watch Stand and Deliver?
No, I was asked to cover it, but I was helping someone with their black belt test that
Okay.
Saturday, and that.
So I had 2 TVs going all weekend long. So I had one TV that was doing the collective, and then I had the main stuff on my main living room television. So I sat on the couch and watched NXT. And then
Let me tell you what I haven't seen the whole thing. I've seen a couple of highlights, and I went out of my way to find a couple of matches because the tag team match was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other one that was good? The only other thing I'm remembering off the top of my head was the Italian mafia family breaking up, and I don't.
Oh my God,
care.
my son! My son watched that with me, and we had all kinds of jokes going for that, just because he thought the D'Angelo family was hilarious. So the pre-show tag match with the girls was okay. I always have to look up who Gigi Dolan is, and I have to keep reminding myself.
How do you not remember who she? I don't know.
I always have to remind myself. Just leave it at that.
Okay.
I was like, "Are you Tampon Girl?" Yeah, you're Tampon Girl. Okay. So this is the thing I do. I like the Ricky Saints Ethan Page match.
That was good. Not great, but it was good.
It was a solid wrestling match. Yeah, the tank match with Tank and Tank. I don't know who any of these people are. I think the last NXT thing I watched had Fraxium on it. But
Fraxium's a fun tag team, and Hank and Tank are over. So they wound up putting together a pretty decent match. The women's, I think it was the women's U.S. title ladder match that Sol Ruca finally won.
Right.
I enjoyed a lot of that. The finishing stretch was a bit much for me because I'm not the biggest fan of that. Hey, let's stop caring about everything we've done before and get a bunch of these spots in before the finish.
My son and I were just watching it by ourselves, but I called my daughter in to watch this match in particular. Because she likes to see women fall off ladders, so that was fun.
Who doesn't?
I think my new favorite female wrestler right now is Stephanie. I call her Stephanie Vader. Stephanie Vaquer.
Stephanie Vaquer is awesome.
Yeah, Stephanie Vaquer has it all. She's beautiful. She's got a great shape. Her gimmick is awesome, and she can actually wrestle.
There's 2 women on NXT that I think are going to be serious future for women's wrestling in the WWE. Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. Those 2 are great. They are great together. Whenever they get called up, they're going to make some noise. Like those, assuming they can survive the Poochie Shark Tank. But
and Jordynne Grace, she looks better since she slimmed down. When I first saw her, I think she showed up. I think it was at All In, and the very first All In, and she was in like the Battle Royal with the guys, and I was like, "Who is this dwarf?" She slimmed down a lot. She looks a lot more lithe than she used to. So, I like Jordynne Grace. I just don't want Jordynne Grace to wrestle men anymore. That drives me insane. Oba Femi. Oof.
You're a new favorite guy.
Yeah, he is a large man. This triple threat with him, Javon Aaron, and Trick Williams. I like Trick Williams. I'm looking.
I don't care for Trick.
I'm hoping for big things from him. He's got a really good look. But I think Oba Femi is one of these guys who, if he doesn't injure himself or he needs a good heater. He needs like a Paul Heyman, not necessarily the Paul Heyman, but he needs a good guy to speak for him, to run around with a megaphone. Because I don't think his mic skills are all that great, but he has a great look, and he's somebody who they could put at the top of the card, and send out on the road, send him do interviews and stuff. And I think he's a really fun, inspirational story, and he looks great. He wrestles, he's still green, but they're all green.
Like
that's what MXT. Should. Yeah,
he wrestles like he should for a guy his size, working the people he's working.
Also, at this stage of his wrestling career,
yeah.
He needs some more seasoning, some more years ahead of him. But for the most part, like I said, I see big things for Oba Femi. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
So that was NXT. All right, so let's get into WrestleMania Night 1. WrestleMania. We don't necessarily need to do this like match by match.
But I gave star ratings to everything.
Good. Let's direct people there. Here
I didn't write it up. I did it for this.
Oh, did you? Do you want to go match by match, Robert?
We can do it quickly if you like. Again, there's some of these we don't need to dwell on.
Yeah, like Jey Uso versus Walter / Gunther.
Okay. I actually liked this match a lot. I know there's a segment of the internet wrestling community that is pissed about the who went over.
Really, see? That's more interesting to me than the match itself, because I thought Jey Uso was like the most over guy in the company, sells the most merch, kisses the most babies, makes all the women swoon. So why doesn't everyone want him to beat Walter?
Okay, a couple of things. One, because Gunther is awesome.
Correct.
Gunther is a much better worker than Jey.
I agree. Walter is amazing.
Call him Gunther. Let's not be pedantic here.
No.
He puts 60 pounds back on, he can be Walter again. Until then, he's Gunther.
Oh, is that how we're differentiating him? When he's fat, he's Walter. When he looks like a cancer victim, he's Gunther.
He doesn't look like a cancer victim. Don't be silly.
He's so skinny.
He only looks skinny because he's tall and long.
Okay.
Anyway.
I've done my bit now. I don't want to keep fighting you, Gunther.
Okay. Point being, people like Gunther's ring work, as they should.
Right.
People have started to gravitate a little bit towards him as a character because his mic work has been improving. So the notion of this guy who is legitimately good at this having to put over the guy who is sloppy, but who has an entrance that makes people squee, is a little bit off-putting to segments of the fandom.
It's fair.
Now, it's not the biggest segment of the fandom. Most people are not like that. I understood Jey was always going over. Again, the man's over. Look, Triple H there's a larger narrative here. There's a lot of pushback on the decisions that were being made by Triple H because he's head of creative now and is in charge of everything, basically. This build to WrestleMania got a lot of criticism. Some of it was very fair. Some of it isn't. But the pushback on Jey getting getting the push to the losers bracket world title, which is what that one is by and large. But Jey getting pushed to that got some pushback from people, and I understood why at the Rumble people weren't always all that thrilled with it, because Jey had the least interesting story of anyone in that match, like by a non-trivial margin. But when Triple H comes out and says, look, Jey's over, he's likable, people get behind him. If you give me a list of the 20 best workers you've ever seen, if you give me the list like the 20 greatest professional wrestling superstars, like, give me 4 Mount Rushmores kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There will be those guys on that pedestal are not going to be in like the top 20 of best workers because some of those guys never made it to that level. I'd rather push someone who is over than someone who is a technical wizard who nobody cares about. And I think that's fair. So again, there's a segment of the fan base that just
I don't care for
wasn't
Jey,
thrilled with it.
Jason does nothing for me. But then again, I wasn't paying as close attention to the Bloodline storyline where he kind of came out of that.
Yeah, the early days of the Bloodline were what kind of really got Jey into this kind of position because people really started getting behind him around then, and he did really good work. I have no problem with him getting, give him a couple of months with the belt. He'll be fine. It won't be great, but it'll be fine.
Yeah, well, at this point, I don't understand why we even have, intercontinental and North American titles. They're like, they might as well be the European title because the real title is the one John Cena has, and then the one Jey has is the Intercontinental title. Because
there's too much
I know
stuff.
Why, Robert. I hope you're saying that for everyone else's benefit.
Yes, that's
okay.
Literally that's mostly for everyone else. I know you're not weird about that. So as far as rating that match goes, I don't do quarter stars. I do halves. Yes, Gavin, this is entirely correct. This is a giant problem with WWE and frankly with the UFC as well. I'm going to read it.
Okay, because if I have to tell you the rule, I'm
no. I wanted to address it before I read it.
Okay.
So from Gavin Napier, our good friend, my only contribution: total in-ring time for both nights, I assume bell to bell, not entrance to close, was 3 hours, 18 minutes, and 40 seconds. Total time for ads and entrances and video package, so yeah, entrances would not be included in that, was 4 hours, 16 minutes, and 13 seconds. That's a bit of a problem.
These shows are padded in pageantry.
Yeah, they really are. And most of the front seats are taken up by mascots and product placement. And
Yeah.
this is what happens when you sell out to the WME, but we'll get to that. So, rating for Jay and Gunther, we can talk about that later if you want. Rating for Jay and Gunther, I thought it was enough better than 3.5 stars for me to get to 4, but if I did quarters, this would have been 3.75, but I don't. So I had to make a choice there about that one.
So I treat wrestling the way I treat a lot of things that I talk about. I just react to them. I don't worry about. I hate. Harry likes to pin me down and be like, "Well, what kind of star rating did you give it?" I don't know, fucking loser. Like I don't give a shit.
Well, okay. I started. So
no. It's fine that everybody else does it. I'm not commenting about you. My whole thing is that's not how I think about this stuff. This isn't a sport.
Well, I'm not. Hang on. Okay, let me address why I do it the way I do it. Now I can be quick. When I started covering wrestling, when Larry Zonka was in the hospital, because we needed an all hands on deck thing, I did not give star ratings because I hadn't watched professional wrestling diligently enough over the last 2.5 years, 3 years at that point. Actually, geez, it was longer than that. I hadn't watched enough of it consistently enough to feel like I could give an honest rating about the art being presented. And everybody threw a hissy fit at me.
When I'm watching a match, I wonder.
So my thing is 2.5 stars is average. It's average what I expect.
When I'm watching a match, it can do either two things. It can either make me think of something better that I watched, or it can keep me invested from start to finish. And that's kind of the difference between good and bad. I mean, there's a lot of sloppy and awkward that goes in the middle of all of that. But for the most part, I'm either with it until the entire way, in which case it's good and I enjoy it, or it just reminds me of something else that I saw that I would prefer to be watching. And I remember being in New York City. I remember being in Brooklyn the night that Pete Dunne beat Walter for the NXT title. Or the European title, whichever one it was.
UK.
Yeah, the NXT. And I remember how great that match was. I remember the crowd. Match. Yeah, it was one of the best wrestling matches I'd ever seen. And
in all seriousness, Gunther is one of the 3 best in-ring guys in the world right now. He's tremendous.
Yes, and I was missing that match as I was watching Jey Uso and Gunther. I mean, Jey Uso was a proper, salmon to Gunther's bear. He threw him around. He bit him. He pawed at him. And, he tossed him around as much as he could. And Jey Uso bumped for him really well. And then when it came to hope spots and being able to believably get the upper hand and win the title, it was fine. I'm just not invested in Jey Uso. B, he's no Pete Dunne, which is weird because it's like when you look and see what Pete Dunne's doing these days versus what Jey Uso's doing, you're like, how do you compare the two? Because Pete Dunne gave Walter a much better match.
You also missed the bloodbath from Jimmy Uso. That was kind of the big selling point for this one. 2 weeks, so 2 weeks before Raw, Jimmy, they ran a bit of an angle where Jay loses his confidence. He's tripping, going for spears, Gunther's in his head. So Jimmy shows up, and the lesser Uso slaps Gunther. You got me doing it now, curse you. Slaps Gunther, and Gunther's like, okay, how about we have a match, and we'll just see. And Gunther beats the crap out of him. Then Jay shows up after the match, it's his brother. Then Gunther jumps them both, zip ties Jay to the bottom rope, and brutalizes Jimmy. And in one of the rare instances these days of blood on WWE, cuts him wide open. Chokes him out in front of his brother, takes all of this blood and just smears it on his chest and arms. Genuinely great segment. But again, if you didn't see some of the build, you're not going to really be there with Jay for this. And then you've got a less talented worker and a more talented worker.
Yeah. All right. Next one was the New Day doing their evil New Day thing versus the War Raiders, who were just there to sell Clash of Clans, and that's all I have to say about this match. Also, I missed the trumpet. I missed the trombone. It's so long ago, and I remember I was talking to my kids about it. I was like, because they know is the New Day as unicorn writing, and their mother likes Biggie and all that. We're a long ways removed from those days. But I'm watching this and I'm like, gosh, I miss the old New Day. Because it was reminding me of how the New Day started. It was very much we are heel black guys, but we are leaning into being overtly positive. And that's where a lot of that stuff came from.
They were obnoxiously positive and optimistic and upbeat.
Right, which made them heels. And I did, and it very quickly, like they didn't know what else to do with overt optimism, so they became silly. And if you'll remember, good old
pancakes and
he brought up pancakes. Xavier Woods, not Consequences Creed, the same guy, but I keep calling everyone by their old gimmicks tonight.
That's a weird choice.
So Xavier Woods, and I can't remember who he did it to, but he was doing the trombone thing, like like you do with a fat guy, and I remember he would get behind somebody, go, and people wanted to legit choke Xavier Woods, and I'm like, gosh, this is the New Day that I miss, and this version of the New Day where they're just normal and angry, I'm like, who gives a fuck?
Well, you missed how they...
Hang on. And it also made me miss the fucking War Raiders from NXT years ago when they wrestled in Brooklyn. I was having a lot of that going on Saturday night.
And you and I occasionally, Mark, you have turned into the desperate for nostalgia guy that we desperately rail against. And
it's not a desperate for nostalgia. I'm just reminded of when I used to like this.
2.5 stars, serviceable, but nothing more.
Could care less. My most memorable thing about this, other than my trip down memory lane, is my son going, "Boy, this seems like this match was only put together to advertise Clash of Clans." And I was like, "You're so smart." My gosh.
They kept the SmackDown tag team titles off of WrestleMania. You'll notice. Because they can't sell Clash of Clans with the Street Profits and the Motor City Machine Guns and DIY. Instead, they get a TLC match on SmackDown. This coming SmackDown.
So the next one is Jade Cargill versus Naomi, and this I was into because this had a good story to it. There's a part of me that wants to get into a whole, the Housewives of Atlanta vibe that they're going for, but I'll just annoy you and it'll only be funny to me and the people watching. So anyway,
do it for the audience. It's okay.
It's just every time Bianca Belair screamed, but it was during the Elimination Chamber, and there was another bit where she was screaming and yelling. That's all I could hear was the broads from the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I love Jade Cargill. I love her body shape. I love her looks. She's still green as goose shit. Someday she'll really nail this wrestling thing. She's, kind of like an Obafemi, but where just keep working at it. You'll get this eventually. Because right now, if she's in there with somebody, who can really carry her, and smooth out the hard edges, I think she looks better. She's in there with Naomi, who Naomi is also serviceable, but not exactly somebody who can carry a match by herself. So you've got somebody who's still kind of green, kind of doesn't really understand how wrestling works still. And then you've got somebody who's only good if she's in there with somebody else who's good. So there's a lot of sizzle in here. And again, I like watching Jade do stuff. But not this leaned on that a lot, as it should have, because there wasn't enough technical stuff to support it.
I'm going to stick up for Naomi a little bit because, again, you haven't been watching a lot, and she's been on SmackDown for my entire tenure covering it, basically, at this point.
Okay.
She's better than you're giving her credit for. Now, she's not Shawn Michaels. She's not Bryan Danielson. Like that, she is not.
Okay.
But she is a lot better than you're giving her credit for.
But I don't think she's as good as Bayley, who I think is...
They're kind of on par these days.
Has Bayley gotten worse? Because she used to be fancy. She used to be the best woman wrestler they had, technically.
She's never been the best wrestler they've had.
Of the women's revolution, of the 4 girls that came over, who was the best technically?
Technically?
Yeah, who was the most technically sound?
Probably still Becky. She's on top of both of those categories for those 4.
I don't know. I always thought Bayley... I thought Bayley was the best out of the 4, but this feels like we're fighting over inches here.
Bayley's... Bailey's got a lower ceiling but a higher floor for her
Mhm.
style.
So with you would be what, Becky, Bailey, Charlotte, and then dead last is Roger the Alien.
I don't know how to rate between Poochie and Roger.
Well, I definitely think Poochie is a better wrestler than Roger. I said as much to Harry when we
I
talked
would
about House of
okay.
Glory.
Let me phrase it this way:
Mm-hmm.
when Charlotte isn't throwing a hissy fit, and when
Yeah.
she actually like wants to work, yes, she's very good. You only get that out of her like 4 times a year. Then
So
on the
anyway,
other hand, you've got Roger the Alien, Mercedes Moné at this point, who just does the same things no matter where she is.
yeah, I said
And
to Harry, I don't think she's a good wrestler. I think she gets by on being Snoop Dogg's cousin.
she gets by on on her reputation at this point
You
more
know
than
what I just
anything
said?
else.
All right. So anyway, this match was fine. You know,
Yeah, I think I went somewhere between 3.5, sort of depending on my mood. Let me give them credit for the main thing that they did here that I appreciated.
mm-hmm.
You sold this.
Hang on. My other favorite thing is my kids going, "What's with the fucking caution tape?" And I'm like, "Well, you see, whenever a good guy turns into a bad guy, they have to come out in caution tape." See Owen Hart from 20 years ago.
You've given me Orlando Jordan flashback, so thanks for that one.
You're welcome. Now continue.
Big thing I wanted to get across for this, like at least they didn't come out and have a wrestling match. Like they sold this as hatred
Yeah.
and how much these two wanted to kill each other, and they came out and they worked like they wanted to kill each other. So
Yeah. That's why it was good in my mind.
yeah, like
This-
that's the biggest
This felt
thing
like a
about
fight.
this.
It was awkward, but it felt like a fight. Is the point that I'm trying to get across?
Yeah.
Like,
I'd agree with that.
you know, Steve Austin once made fun of John Cena's STF, which I was telling Jonas about that, and then Jonas saw the STFU and laughed his ass. It was 11 o'clock at night, and my 11-year-old son on a school night laughing himself silly at the stupid STFU, and
It worked better when John Cena's forearms were another like 1.5 inches in diameter.
Yeah,
because he could. This is the weirdest thing. It looks dumb. It really does.
Yeah.
But when his arms were big enough, he could actually get the appropriate pressure with his forearms to close your carotid arteries. He can't anymore. They're too small.
So Austin's point on John, when John went on the Steve Austin podcast, he was like, "Will you please tighten that up? There were so many holes, gaping holes in your STFU. My God, man." And that was kind of what my last word on Jade Cargill versus Naomi was. They because they were selling this on the hatred between them, and there was a lot of spark, you can make up for the fact there's a lot of holes in their wrestling. There were some gaping holes between them. This was you take that away, and you can see the awkwardness between these two girls. So moving on. Next, my man, the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu of the Fatu Zillions, defeated LA Knight, 10 minutes and 40 seconds. Good match. Both guys can work. Jacob Fatu ate him up. I was happy.
4 stars for me. Look, LA Knight is a really good worker.
Mm-hmm.
He's super over. He's been doing good work with the bloodline too, with like the B team bloodline. That's Solo, Tamatonga, Jacob Fatu, Tongaloa. I was very surprised when Fatu arrived in the WWE because the biggest issue keeping him out of it was never his in-ring work or his promos.
Felonies, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was his inability to travel because he was a felon.
Yeah.
They seem to have smoothed a lot of that out. I don't know if enough time has passed or what's going on there, but no, Mark, please stop insinuating giant felonies of international issues. That's not really a thing. But he showed up. He beat the crap out of Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes' first night.
Mm-hmm.
He's been money since he arrived. This was a foregone conclusion that he was going to win, not in a bad way. He and Knight worked really well together. They had some really good spots. Again, Jacob Fatu has been everything they wished they had with Solo is what they have in Fatu. And him eclipsing Solo, I think they're going to finally work into a storyline in a little bit going forward because Solo was only ever able to generate reflected heat when people wanted Roman Reigns back. And now that he doesn't have that, Solo's floundered pretty hard.
Yeah. I love this match. I love Jacob Fatu. My whole family loves Jacob Fatu. We were very happy when he won. It's like, you're supposed to cheer LA Knight, but it's like, nope, we were all solidly behind Jacob.
Look, both of these guys got cheered. they deserve it. Like there was no way the fans were going to be unhappy with this match.
Do you think this was the best match of the weekend?
Best match of night 1.
Okay. I'm saying from like purely technical, when you want a solid wrestling match that's good from beginning to end, no missed spots, no.
Okay. The best match of the entire WrestleMania event was the women's triple threat from night 2.
Okay.
And I don't think that's especially close.
But this one you think is the best match of night 1?
Yes. And I'm going to get a ton of heat and hate for not liking the triple threat main event. I'll go into why when we get there.
All right. Next one was Chad Gable versus Rey Fénix.
Rey Fénix is awesome. He's a late substitution here because Rey Mysterio got injured.
You like Rey Fénix. I thought you were not huge fans of the Lucha Brothers. For those watching, okay. Hang on, I got to do something for the people. For those watching, Rey Fénix and Penta were for a long time the Lucha Brothers in AEW. They had a long-standing feud and a lot of matches, some good, some bad, with the Young Bucks. So they're good people to bring over as we start to move Rey Mysterio out and bring in some new mask guys. But they got a lot of stink on them from having been in AEW for as long as they were, which is why I was surprised when they showed up in AEW. WWE.
Okay. So you are not familiar with how this went down. So let me do a little bit of this.
50 words or less.
Okay. My issues with the Lucha Brothers were when they weren't as good as they are now. Mm-hmm. Is kind of the long and the short of that. I actually loved both guys in Lucha Underground. They weren't a team then, but they were both in that promotion. So was Rey, actually. Rey Mysterio was there briefly. I miss Lucha Underground. It's one of the only things in wrestling I miss now that it's been gone, but that's a other discussion.
For those of you who don't know what Lucha Underground was, imagine the Telenueva, but also pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Lucha Underground.
Yeah, a little bit of that. So, as you mentioned, the Lucha Brothers, they were in TNA for a while. They were in AEW for a while. The relationship they had in AEW soured. I don't know exactly why. There's been speculation. I'm not going to speculate. But that relationship stopped working. And when it became clear that, okay, we're not going to re-sign when our contracts are up, Tony Khan basically said, okay, then you won't be booked for the last 4 months of your contract. And Penta got out first. That's why he debuted here first. And Fénix followed when his deal was up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just their time in AEW was not poorly spent on balance.
No,
if you
again,
want my thought,
they were one of the early pillars of the tag team division those first couple of years.
Yeah, and then you added Pac, and they were the Death Triangle, and they were one of the big forerunners for the trios stuff. They were important. And again, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know when things turned south, but they did. And both guys are more than talented enough to be in WWE. So here we are. And Penta we'll get to Penta later but he's been just so great since coming over. And is another guy who's over.
So Rey Fénix and Chad Gable put on a really good match.
El Grande Americano.
Uh-huh. El Grande Americano. I actually had to look it up to see who it was. Because again,
why did you have to look that up? It's clearly Chad Gable.
Because
that's
I don't have a lot of
joke.
Context. No, I get that, but remember, if I don't see the preceding segments, I'm not paying that close attention. Okay. So in any case,
the whole storyline here has been that Chad Gable can't beat luchadors.
Yeah,
they were all beating him.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, Dragon Lee, whoever, and it was pissing him off. So he grabbed Dominic Mysterio backstage and said, "I need help beating the luchadors." And Dominic Mysterio said, "Stop touching me, you weird man. And here's a number. Go to Mexico. This guy will help you out." Chad Gable disappears. El Grande Americano shows up.
Can we talk about Dominic Mysterio for a second? How
we'll get to him in a minute.
There was a ladder match to determine the birthright of
the custody.
The parentage.
No, the parentage was not in dispute. It was Eddie Guerrero. In universe, Dominic Mysterio is Eddie Guerrero's son.
That's the thing is he wrestles like Eddie.
I
came to that conclusion this week, and I'm like, oh my god, that really is Eddie Guerrero in there. Anyway, back to
him growing out the mustache and the mullet is not an accident.
Yeah. In any case, Chad Gable and Rey Fénix put on a perfectly serviceable match. It was a lot of fun.
3 stars. Again, a little over average for what I'd expect. I give both men credit for slapping this together in 24 hours and making it be as good as it was.
Chad Gable's great. It's just he's short, and it's one of those things where sometimes you can get past it and sometimes you can't. And I credit Chad Gable for being as good as he is, for rolling with the punches, for giving whatever garbage WWE gave him.
Dude, they made him Shorty G for like a year and a half.
I know, that's the point that I'm getting at. Like they took all the what was Terry's name?
Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster.
They gave him all the Red Rooster stuff, and he turned chicken shit into chicken salad. So he deserves it, and I'm a huge fan of Chad Gable. He is better than people think he is. He's just vertically challenged. All right, next one is my
Tiffany and Poochie.
Oh my God! So this was a huge hit in my house because we all like yelling "It's Tiffy time." And
that surprises me not at all.
Well, first of all, my daughter, who likes everybody hates Charlotte Flair and just desperately, my daughter is going through the LOL Charlotte wins the way everybody else went through that with John Cena.
Some of us have been there for a while. I don't call her Poochie as an accident.
But I actually have to say, like, Tiffany Stratton, I don't know where she came from or what she's all about, but I like her. I like her look. I like her gimmick. I think she wrestles really, really well.
She was a Olympic gymnast.
It shows. Anyway, her and Charlotte put on a really, really good match.
This was not really good.
This is not it's not the best match, but it was definitely one of my favorites for the weekend. It was the one I actually had it was one of the ones I had more interest in than anything else.
Okay. Bless you for not knowing why this was so awkward.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to 3 stars on this. That's as high as I could get to it. It's too awkward. There's too much slop. Charlotte out there throwing potatoes and sandbagging because she's not going over. And just end this interaction between these two. It's been a disaster since Charlotte won the Rumble. Because she won the Rumble, and I knew she was going to challenge Tiffany. They're not running her and Rhea again because she can't bully Rhea Ripley anymore. She did the first time they wrestled. So she was going to pick Tiffany Stratton because Tiffany's the better version of Charlotte Flair. And she then eventually picked Tiffany. They took way too long getting to that point, but they did eventually. And then she spent like 3 weeks bullying Tiffany Stratton on the mic and shoving her around.
Can I say this? Speaking of being bullied, for weeks I said to you that I think Tiffany Stratton's going to win this, and I had to deal with your bloviating fucking Khrushchev-esque speeches for what went on for hours at a time, telling me that, oh no, because she's somehow related to fucking Triple H like a Fatu, that she was going to win this match, and oh look, Tiffany won. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest.
Do you want to know when I agreed with you?
Sure.
When they changed the script after Charlotte couldn't handle being booed, but in Chicago.
She won. That's all I care about.
So anyway, but this was just terrible. Like, Charlotte bullies her for a while. They have a couple of big pull-apart brawls that are okay, but go on forever because Charlotte can't let Tiffany be the one walking out.
You know what I miss?
Then
I missed the night that the go home, I think it was, show between Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte, where they were putting them in police cars, and they never do this, but they put them all in the same police car.
They put 2 of them in the same car, yeah.
Yeah, they started killing each other. Oh, my God, what a great go home to WrestleMania for those women. They acted like such psychos. It was fantastic.
So things go off the rails during a split screen interview when, again, Charlotte just talks over Tiffany anytime Tiffany tries to say anything. So the next time they're face-to-face in Chicago, the crowd boos Charlotte Flair like they used to boo Dominic Mysterio. Mm-hmm. And Charlotte can't handle it. She basically quits mid-promo and looks at Tiffany and says, "I'll give you the last word." Tiffany then says, well, you can pretend to be the queen, but you're not the queen of shit. And before the line even lands, Charlotte starts mocking Tiffany's voice by going really high into her falsetto. I'm not going to do that because it's bad for me. And I can't hear you and the mics don't pick you up. And Tiffany then says, look, after WrestleMania, you're going to be like you are in real life, alone. Because you have a better chance of catching your dad's divorce record than his title record. You're what, 0-3 now? Because she just got divorced from Andrade. Mm-hmm. And Tiffany then left the ring, and Charlotte did the, well, then why is Kaiser in my DMs? Because Tiffany and Ludwig Kaiser are dating.
That's what led up to all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my only response was, this was funnier when Conor McGregor did it with a broken leg to Dustin Poirier. And that whole segment, again, it fell apart. Got enough heat on both of them that that was when I went, okay, they're not going to do this again with Charlotte. Like, if she was being planned to go over, she is not going over anymore. And then they basically kept them away from each other for the last 3 weeks. Again, didn't care for this match. Glad Tiffany went over. Charlotte can go away, get more surgery, and come back and get another title shot, because that's what she does.
All right, in the main event of night one, you had Seth Rollins beating CM Punk and Roman Reigns by pinfall. CM Punk came out with Paul Heyman, which was the favor. Paul Heyman betrays both CM Punk and Roman Reigns. He nutshots them both. Then he hands the chair to Seth Rollins, who crowns Roman Reigns with it, and that's that. I liked this match. It was fine. I like the story leading up to it was better than the match itself. There was something about a lot of the matches over the weekend where everything kind of felt like a half step behind. And some of it I just thought was like the matchup. So like AJ, it's like we'll talk about it in a minute, but like AJ Styles and Logan Paul feels like they're going at a half step because Logan Paul's not that good. You know, Jade and Naomi half step because Jade's not that good. Tiffany Stratton, Charlotte, they're going at a half step for whatever the reasons are.
Because again, this is how Charlotte behaves when she's not going over and isn't happy with the booking.
And so this one too, like the three of them could make it passable, but I was really watching hard with both my eyes. I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't talking to my kids or asleep. I was paying close attention to this, and this also. CM Punk showing his age. Roman Reigns getting a little bit slower. Seth Rollins has had half a dozen knee injuries. They all just seemed a half a step off. Like they weren't meshing nearly as well as they should. And if you've watched enough triple threat matches, when you've got young guys who are spry,
and we'll get to a much better triple threat match next,
and able to do this, you can see a lot more dynamic wrestling than what these three old codgers were able to cobble together. This was more story than it was wrestling match for me.
This was somebody pointed this out to me, and I can't unsee it. If you look at the genesis of like some bad habits in current professional wrestling, you can find the good matches that people took the wrong lessons from. You and Pat talked about this with the Triple H, Benoit, Shawn Michaels triple threat match, that a bunch of people took the wrong lessons from how good that match is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people looked at Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair and Ric's retirement match and went, oh, the drama, the emotion.
Okay, so you need to shut up for 2 minutes so that I can explain that to people, because wrestling fans know what we're talking about, but not everybody who watches wrestling is watching this. So going into Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair had been doing a thing where I think he was told either by Vince or somebody that if you lose a match, you're fired. So he goes on this like epic winning streak. And then finally it's like, final boss time. He's like, you get paired up with Shawn Michaels. And there's no way
at WrestleMania.
Yeah. Mr. WrestleMania. The only other one besides The Undertaker with more wins than losses. So there's no fucking way old ass 90,000-year-old Ric Flair is beating Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, by the way, at his 2.0 part of his career, at the height of it. Okay, this is
very nearly, yeah.
This is super Shawn Michaels, and you also have to understand that Triple H, Shawn Michaels, a whole bunch of guys, view Rick as kind of like a parental figure, uncle, father, mentor.
One of the gods of professional wrestling.
They very much, this is very much a hero to Shawn Michaels, and they have the match. It's fine. Shawn Michaels drags Ric Flair to one of his better matches at this stage of his career. It gets to a point where Ric Flair has gone as far as he's going to go, and he can't go no more. It is time, and this was set up in a promo earlier by Shawn Michaels saying that he was going to put down Old Yeller. For you kids out there, Old Yeller was a dog who was shot. So when we're saying we're putting down Old Yeller, it means we are shooting a dog in the head to die. And Shawn Michaels says to Ric Flair, I'm going to put you down like Old Yeller. And so the old war horse is fighting the young buck, and the young buck takes him to the bitter edge.
45-year-old Shawn Michaels, the young buck in the situation.
Yes, the young whippersnapper, middle-aged Shawn Michaels. And Shawn Michaels does not want to do this. This is Snape in the Harry Potter movie. It's like, I don't want to do this.
He actually, like, one of the things is as we get towards WrestleMania that year, Ric Flair is like, I'm still here. I'm still the man. I need an opponent for WrestleMania. And I'd really like to do this with you, Shawn. And Shawn's like, well, Rick, I love you. I don't want to retire you.
Yeah.
And Rick's like, oh, you think you're going to win?
Yeah.
And there's a bit where Shawn is like reluctant to even accept the match.
Yeah. So we get to this point, and Shawn knows he has Ric Flair is basically taking every ounce of strength he has left in his body just to stand to be shot, to be kicked. And Shawn Michaels looks at him, he looks at the fans, and he looks at Rick, and he says, Father. He called him Father, and he said, I'm sorry, I love you. And proceeded to kick Ric Flair's head straight up into the moon.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you.
So there's a lot of people who looked at that and went, oh boy, this is high drama. This is like great stuff. And it's a good match. It's a really good match. Then this directly leads to Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano taking 45 minutes to scream at each other. Or Adam...
I have made endless fun of that.
Or Adam Cole and MJF like, no, you're my best friend. I can't fight you anymore. You're the only person I believe could be my friend, and not you. Why could you turn on me? Well, because he's injured and we don't have anything else for him to do. So, like, yeah. Taking the wrong lessons.
Yeah.
This match takes a lot of the wrong lessons in terms of its execution. So it's all about, oh no, look at Paul Heyman being over there crying. Oh, think of the deep 20-year history between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. We're all just tired of it by now. And oh, isn't it great that CM Punk gets to live out his boyhood dream of main eventing night one of a buy one, two, get one special on Peacock because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Wait, sorry, wrong promo from CM Punk.
Anyway, when Paul Heyman turned on CM Punk, I was not at all surprised.
This is my big gripe with this match.
When he turned on Roman Reigns, I was not at all surprised.
Every damn thing about this was predictable, and not in a good way.
Yeah. The only thing that made me laugh about it, and again, I don't want to get into it because you're not fun to do this with. So I'll just do it in my own head and do it to somebody else who thinks I'm funny. But just him, rejecting the toxic ex, rejecting the big hunky boyfriend, and going with the new boy, the new boy who hadn't hurt him just yet. I was like, it's typical, and I laughed, and I was like, well, I as toxic as CM Punk is, and I don't know, and I have watched a lot about his run in AEW, and I don't agree with him entirely. His line about I couldn't get well in the place that made me sick. Like, I'm more on CM Punk's side during his first WWF run than not. The AEW stuff, I look at him and go, you have some issues, sir.
Be a professional, Dan.
Yeah. That being said, I still like CM Punk. I like the match for what it was. It just seems it was one of those where these guys are CM Punk is, but the rest of them are not that old. And it felt like it was kind of three old guys really struggling to get through this match.
They're getting by. They're trying to get by on the drama. So they're giving these big pauses to the action to let everyone get the big reaction shots of the crowd. Is a lot of how this is structured. Here's my other big gripe with this.
One thing, and then I'm just going to shut up and let you finish, then we'll get to night two. But I desperately, and only because of the weirdness of the way wrestling is currently operating and my own weird wish fulfillment, I really wanted Jon Moxley to show up, and I wanted to see one more Shield bomb. I desperately wanted to see a full-on Shield bomb. I miss those days. So when people understand the sort of the context of that, psychological context. A lot of what's happened in the last 20 years of wrestling has not excited me. I've been more agitated or bored than not. But occasionally something happens and God damn it, it draws me back in again. And the Shield was one of those things. I fucking love the Shield. The Shield and Daniel Bryan were the only things I cared about in wrestling for a really long time. And a brief Shield reunion WrestleMania Saturday night would have sent me over the moon.
As a guy who you could add for me, the Wyatt family to that, those were the only good things in WWE. And frankly, they're part of the reason I stopped watching. When they wouldn't actually get behind Bray Wyatt as the most interesting guy on television.
Mm-hmm.
When the Shield broke up and we got the Authority, which just, I vividly remember this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching an episode of Raw. I'm chatting with because I'm not covering it. I'm just watching. And I'm in the comments section at 411 because I'm following that thing and half interact. And I realize something. Everybody doesn't like this. Like, nobody is enjoying the show in the comments, which is not uncommon.
Right.
But I realize I'm not enjoying the show. And I'm like 40 minutes into this episode, and this is 3 hours of Raw, if memory serves. It was like right around the time they went back to 3 hours. And I said to myself, Self, you don't want to be here.
He called himself Self.
If your children call you father, how I address myself can be my own thing. Thank you. You don't want to be here. You're not enjoying this. Why are you here? And I stopped. I stopped watching because I wasn't enjoying it. And I stopped for many years. And nowadays I don't watch wrestling I'm not paid to watch is kind of how I go about it. So, but anyway, here's my biggest gripe with this match. Not only was it predictable, it's so deeply uninteresting. Like, CM Punk was here to get the emotion of I finally main evented, I closed the show for a night of WrestleMania. Okay, check it off your bucket list. Don't care. Roman Reigns. Roman needs a new character.
Yeah.
He got 5 great years out of the Tribal Chief. In the modern landscape of professional wrestling, that's a miracle. He was great. His career rebirth with that character is tremendous. I love it. For a long period of that time, he was part of the best thing in professional wrestling. I'll include anything in that. The Bloodline stuff was the best stuff in wrestling.
He was so inspirational to Robert. Robert had wrote an entire thing and did an entire podcast on the Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, you must finish the story thing, which, if anything inspires Robert to do anything, it's a major miracle.
Minor, not major, but
says you.
Yeah, for WrestleMania 39, where he didn't, and I got to feel very foolish.
It was a good podcast, though.
Why I will never do something like that again for exactly that reason. But
oh my God, fucking Christ.
Anyway, so point being, since Roman lost the belt last year, he took time off. He came back. He spent more than half of this year feuding with Solo Sikoa over the Ulafala and the New Bloodline, which is fine. It's not a bad thing to do. I don't think it actually elevated Solo the way they were kind of hoping it did. However, shined a big old spotlight on Jacob Fatu. We're all better off for that. And we were all reminded how much Tongaloa sucks.
By the way, Tongaloa sucks so hard. How hard does he suck? Even my son noticed.
So Roman's needed a new character. Paul Heyman finally fully breaking from him is going to be the impetus for that. I don't know what it's going to be. But CM Punk is just CM Punk. Like, what's he going to do that's interesting at this point? You can find it compelling. You can enjoy it. But he's not doing anything new or interesting. So he's just CM Punk. And then there's Seth Rollins. He's been doing the same thing for 15 years.
So I said to one of my kids something like, "What the hell is he wearing?" or something like that, or like, "Why did they were remarking about at some point in the weekend they were remarking about his clothing?" And I said, "Seth Rollins dresses at the silly store."
Yes, and he does the Ministry of the Silly Walk, and he's got the world's dumbest laugh. Here's my thing about why I don't care about this. Paul Heyman did the post-show thing and was like, I'm going to do for Seth Rollins what I did for Roman Reigns. Like, no, you're not. What did you do for Roman Reigns? Oh, you revitalized his career, legitimately. Does Seth need his career to be revitalized? He's in the same position he's been in for the last 15 years. It's not a joke. It's not an exaggeration. He's been in the main event scene or one of the featured feuds in this entire godforsaken company for 12 years.
I was going to say, when he broke away from the Shield, he was immediately elevated to the main event.
And he's never left. The closest he got to leaving, and this sucked, by the way, but was when he spent like 8 months feuding with Rey Mysterio. And that ended with him gouging Rey's eye out against the steel steps.
Oh, God, I remember that.
I know you do.
Ugh.
Because you were like, hey, the Monday Night Messiah gimmick is actually something interesting for Seth Rollins. A, no, it's not. B, it ended with Buddy Matthews winning, beating Seth Rollins, but because Seth Rollins doesn't put anyone over, he then beat Buddy a couple of times. Buddy effed off to AEW to form the House of Black. That's where he is now.
All right, so that's night one. Night two.
Seth, again, and so look, Seth is going to do the same thing he's been doing for the last 12 years. Paul Heyman, like, I'm going to elevate him. My man, I know the laundry list of people you were going to elevate who that did not work out for. I remember you and Claudio, you know him as Cesaro. I remember you and Ryback. I remember you and the Big Show. Do we want to keep going down this list?
So, in probably the most celebrated part of the night, such so that I did a TikTok on it, Io Sky shocked the world. Legitimately, that is not hyperbole.
I completely saw this coming.
Shocked the world except for Robert Winfree, who lives on a different planet.
I am not the only one who was not shocked by this.
Defeated Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley. I argued with Harry for like 20 minutes about this. He was convinced Bianca Belair was going to win, and everyone that wasn't Harry thought it was Rhea Ripley.
Okay, I will not be glib. You're both missing the forest for the trees on that one.
So anyway, let me get my 2 cents out there before I have to listen to this again. Io Sky, no one I knew voted for Reagan. Also, no one I knew thought Io Sky had a fucking snowball's chance in hell between these two Amazons. And there she was, which she got some of the funniest reactions out of my kids. First of all, the first match of the night always gets the most investment from my kids because, we're starting the show. They have a lot of energy. You know, it's not 11 o'clock at night. It's 7. So we were all hyper into this. And my son and daughter's comments about who Io Sky is like a drunken woo girl and a drunken boxer mashed into the same girl. She's just, she looks like a drunken fucking homeless woman just running around screaming, she's flailing arms. They love the shit out of Io Sky. They think she's great.
Io is great.
and occasionally they'll ask me because they don't watch as consistently. They're like, who's Io Sky again? I'm like, Garbage Can Girl. It's like, oh, that's right. They think that trick is fantastic. But anyway, we were all just sort of waiting for Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley to tear her in half. And then when she won, there was a legitimate, godforsaken, fucking hands of God, honest, holy shit chant in my living room. We were all like, wasn't quite Daniel Bryan, but we were like, oh God, like we were thrilled. So I threw up a picture of her winning. There was this one instantaneously on the internet, and I put the caption, "This legitimately got a holy shit chant in my living room," and immediately 100 likes. Like there was a palpable, at least from that vantage point, there was a palpable sense of, wow, somebody who we didn't see coming winning that match and who really deserved it. Like a lot of things kind of came to a head with Io Sky winning that match. Also, it was a great match. It was one of the best ones of the weekend.
The best one of this WrestleMania.
Yeah. I dug Rhea Ripley's. What was she doing? Dark Knight Metal? Was that the crown thing that she's had over her face?
That was the no, that's the Batman Who Laughs.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So she had that going. We all had a hearty laugh at the way they introduced Bianca Belair as girls jumping rope. All right. But anyway, yeah, this was a great way to kick off night 2. It kind of goes all downhill from here.
That's a bit much. We'll get some specifics. It never quite hits this high again, but
yeah,
there's some other good stuff on night 2 before we crap all over it. But
sure.
I vacillate between 4.5 and 5 stars on this match. I'm not sure where I've landed.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those two. This was great.
Yeah.
High pace. I'm probably going 4.5 just because there's a narrative to the match, but there's not a lot of selling. And that kind of just is something that will ding things for me a little bit. It's one of the reason, like, I've given 5-star matches, 5-star ratings before. I don't do it very often because I have standards.
What's an example of a 5-star match for you?
I've got a few. Let me think. Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland when
Okay.
Bryan won the title in AEW.
Okay. What else?
Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes for the NXT title when
Really?
Dragunov won it.
I would have thought Ilya Dragunov and Walter.
I didn't rate that one.
Okay.
But their first match, the one they did in the empty arena, that is just like, yes, that one's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a few that I'm just, I don't want to wind up in a position where I'm, Meltzer at one day going, you know what, this was a 6-star match, now I have to retroactively fix a bunch of crap. Like, I'm not going to do that. So my 5 stars exist. I have to remind myself that they exist and that 5 stars is not a perfect match because that doesn't really exist. So I give them out on occasion. I'm vacillating on this one. And again, I think I'm a little more 4.5 than 5, but
Classic 5-star match for me. Owen Hart versus the British Bulldog for the European title in Germany.
You mean Bret Hart?
No. I mean what I mean. Jesus.
Okay.
Mean what I mean.
Okay.
Owen Hart versus the British Bulldog for the inaugural European title in Germany. It was like a dark match. Literally, there was like no fucking lights in that arena. But I remember they showed the highlights of that they showed the match in its entirety on Raw because they had taped it in Germany. And I remember thinking to myself, like, my God, it's not getting any better than this. Owen Hart versus the British Bulldog for that European title was money.
That's a very good match. There's a bunch of All Japan stuff that I rate 5 stars. Like
Angle Benoit at WrestleMania 17.
No, actually, that's 4.5 for me.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people say Steamboat and Savage for what that was back then.
You absolutely could. I wouldn't argue that one iota. So again, they exist. And the difference between 4.5 and 5 stars frequently, again, because I don't do quarters. So for me, there's a degree of just personal preference that is inescapable at that point.
William Regal and Fit Finlay, Slamboree.
Been way too long since I've seen it, so I couldn't tell you.
I've said that enough times that I remember it. Love that match. Fantastic.
There's a handful of stuff that, like, you get like a Finlay, Regal, Benoit, a couple of those guys, or Eddie, like you throw them together and you're just getting a really good, like, smash mouth match.
Yeah. Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, WrestleMania 20.
Please don't.
I can guarantee you anyone watching this who really knows wrestling just vomited in their mouth.
Actually, I do give 5 stars to the Benoit Benoit Triple H HBK Triple Threat from 20.
There you go.
Ditto for Angle and Eddie from that same Mania.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this one again, I'm vacillating a little bit there, and I might wind up at 4.5 instead of 5. But if you go 5, I think that's perfectly fair. Again, high pace, very little downtime. All 3 women killed it. The big story here was that Bianca Belair wins the Elimination Chamber. And we know already that Tiffany Stratton has been challenged by Charlotte Flair. So that means Bianca is going to take on the Women's World Champion. At that point, it's Rhea Ripley. And this is kind of paired with the breaking up of the team of Bianca Belair and Naomi when Jade Cargill comes back after it was revealed Naomi shoved her off of a loading dock onto a car. And the assumption is, look, you have Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley. These are the 2 most over women on the roster by a non-trivial margin. They're both baby faces, but either one of them could lean a little heel for the purposes of the match. Belair's been a face her entire run. She's done the John Cena thing where she's just, purely aspirational, purely upbeat. We'll kick your ass if you give her the excuse. But the white meat baby face. And then Rhea, who, again, over like Rover. The assumption is it's these 2. It's the Clash of the Titans. And between Bianca Belair issuing that challenge and WrestleMania, a funny thing happens. Io Sky beats Rhea Ripley for the belt. And the story becomes Bianca and Rhea overlook and ignore Io Sky. They view her as a vestigial appendage to their Titanic clash. And the entire build is Io going, hey, you two, I'm the champion. Pay attention. So she is frequently, again, she's able to get upper hands on brawls and circumstances because she's being overlooked. And that plays into how this match goes. Those Io bumps for those two like nobody's business, and God bless her. But Ripley and Belair wind up fixated too much on each other. And it's how Io's able to wind up getting the win. And it's the perfect conclusion to how that narrative's been playing out. I'm interested to see what happens going forward for all three of these women. Again, Io Sky is awesome. I was sad they couldn't find something for Kairi Sane to do on this WrestleMania. But again, if you're keeping the profits and the guns and DIY off of this, then, well, your priorities are off. But that's a whole other thing. And I'm hoping Asuka's able to come back soon, because the trio of Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Asuka is legitimately awesome.
So, big theme of tonight for me is, gosh, this made me think of better things. And out comes Kerry King to play Damian Priest to the ring. And it just made me miss Slayer. I've seen Kerry King perform live a few times now since he's been doing his solo thing. I saw him at Rockville, and then he opened up for Mastodon. God, Lamb of God, I think it was last summer. And Kerry King's fine. You know, Kerry King does a dab of his own stuff, and then he does a lot of Slayer stuff still. You bring Kerry King out, you do fire and everywhere, and it's all Slayery, and then he plays whatever the fuck song he played, and I was just like,
plays Damian Priest's entrance.
He just play Angel of Death. That's what we all wanted to hear.
That's what you wanted to hear.
That's what Slayer fans want to hear. Slayer. Anyway.
Yeah, I hear there's like 5 of you left, right?
Yeah, so we're all 100. Anyway, so Drew McIntyre defeated Damian Priest. Did Damian Priest actually get legit hurt?
No, not that I'm aware of.
At one point, the announcer was like, he's calling for the medic, and I didn't know if it was legitimate or not.
If the commentary acknowledges it like that, but the match is still going, it's a work.
Okay.
If the match stops, then they say that, then commentary has to acknowledge it.
So this was all right. It was all right. Anytime
you and I are very different on this one. It's okay.
Anytime they do like a no holds barred or street fight or whatever, I want more of that end of it. Not and this was a wrestling match where the referee didn't have to get involved between the two of them. They could just do what they wanted, but they didn't. Neither one of them had much of an imagination. So I was like, meh. This was okay.
Again, that's a bit much.
It was fine. I mean, if you're allowed to like what you like. My opinion of this was, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Punishment Martinez, and I'm long over.
Wow, this is what you're doing tonight.
So I'm not the world's biggest fan of Damian Priest, and Drew McIntyre I soured on after his unfortunate title run during COVID. So at this point, and they had to really wow me, and I was not wowed. Not that it was a bad match. It's just I don't think they made enough use of the no holds barred rule, and I don't think either one of them.
Oh, they only brained each other with the steel steps.
What have you done for me lately?
Dragged you out of that burning building.
It was, like I said, it was okay. I mean, I was entertained by it. I think my kids were entertained by it. I can tell at this point, though, in the show, they're starting to lose my kids, so it tells you a lot right there.
Well, this is another one where if you miss the build, the match isn't going to click the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing here is Drew McIntyre was really pissed at CM Punk. They had a big, long feud for a long time.
Yep.
The last little bit, we pivoted to Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre because...
How many guys on the WWE roster, their gimmick is they hate CM Punk for leaving?
Drew was not mad at CM Punk for leaving.
Mad at him for coming back?
Yes.
Okay, same thing.
So we pivoted to Drew and Priest, with Drew's logic being, Damian, first of all, you eliminated me from the Royal Rumble. Then you pinned me in the Elimination Chamber before I could pin John Cena, and I could have saved all of us that headache. And you know what, Damian? The more I think about it, the more, CM Punk is a piece of crap. But you were the one who benefited every time he screwed me over. You're the one who pinned me at WrestleMania to become champion after I beat Punk. Or after I beat Rollins because Punk attacked me. You're the one who benefited every single time. Every time I tried to get even with Rollins or with Punk or with anyone, it was always you. You were the man behind the curtain benefiting every time I suffered. So you know what? Now we're going to hash this out. And Damian Priest was like, whatever, bro. Until they started fighting. And he went, okay, you picked a fight, man. Now I'm going to make you pay. And then he choke slammed him onto a car windshield as CM Punk walked by. There you go. Now you get it.
Cry me a river.
Yeah, real glass. Look, I liked this. They got the violence more or less. They got as violent as they were going to be allowed to be, right? So they throw stairs at each other.
But I think, Robert, that's half my problem is that I'm watching fucking GCW next to WWE, and
so you're seeing light tubes and thumbtacks and panes of glass and flaming tables.
I'm seeing guys get eviscerated with gusset plates, and that, and no one kicks out of those. So like the WWE, like when you watch them side by side, it's like stiff competition there. But continue.
I'm aware, and it's one of the reasons I very rarely compare promotion to promotion matches like that because I think it's unfair for a variety of reasons. So again, they were as violent as they were allowed to be, which kind of means like they're very judicious with blood. And they had like a good 10-minute violent sprint. We got the Future Shock DDT onto the steps, and I loved the finish. Drew putting Priest's head against that chair in the corner and then claymoring him into it.
I will say this: that got a reaction out of Jonas because he thought he was going to legit break his neck.
So we got a good finish. We had a pretty decent match. I'll take it. I got to 4 here. It's a slightly generous 4, but I'll live with it.
All right. Next is the Fatal 4-Way between Dominic, Braun Breaker, Finn Balor, and Penta. Little disappointed.
Braun Breaker is not human. Look at what that man does.
I was going to say Braun Breaker is one of the guys I enjoy in wrestling right now. Is one of the few. But I'm a little disappointed Braun Breaker didn't chainsaw something in half. Because that was this big thing in NXT there for a while. But this was fun, and I tell you what, I've never liked Dominic Mysterio until I watched him last night, and I realized, oh my God, I don't know what he did or when this happened, but he became Eddie Guerrero reborn, and that touched my heart. So I enjoyed that.
So 2 years ago, we have Dominic Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania.
Yep.
And it's a good match. And then Dominic Mysterio spends a year not wrestling like that again. But he works a really aggressive schedule because he's on TV with the Judgment Day on Monday. He does work with NXT and wins the NXT North American title. And then he appears on SmackDown on occasion. So he's working like 4 days a week. He's doing the old road schedule. And he does that for about 8 to 10 months. And it does wonders for his ability. And he's still booed mercilessly, but the corner, the worm has turned on him over the last, 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
People have stopped, people have loved to hate him for so long that now they kind of want to cheer for him.
Sure.
And then, him kind of breaking up with the Judgment Day after this because, he pinned Finn Balor, and he's about ready to break out more as a good guy. And I'm curious how that's going to play. But this match was a ton of fun. 4 athletic guys who get to cut loose for as long as they cut loose for. Penta's been great in WWE. Glad to have him there. He's over. He's a lot of fun. He's another guy who I really have enjoyed for a long time. Even when he's been booked improperly in places, looking at you, TNA. Finn Balor's Finn Balor. Braun Breaker's a lot of fun. He's probably about ready to graduate to a higher end feud before moving towards the world title, is my guess. Because he did some good stuff with the Intercontinental title. This was a lot of fun. 3.5 stars for me. You could go 4.
All right. Next one is okay. So when I said an hour and a half ago, when I said an hour and a half ago, I was like, we don't need to go match by match because I'd rather just talk about some of the highlights of this thing. You're like, no, I did ratings. I did the homework. You have to check my work. I'm like, all right. So, but this is one of those things I want to talk about because I loved every minute of this. I have no complaints. But this is another one where it's kind of like with our movie reviews, where I'm not agitated by the movie. I'm agitated by the people's reaction to the movie.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think Joe Henry's hilarious.
Okay,
And
hang on. Let me set the stage for this one before we get to it, because you have to understand how we got here.
Can I finish my introduction though?
Okay, your introduction spoils who's involved, which is part of the mystery.
What
In theory.
fucking mystery? It happened yesterday.
Okay, fine. Do it how you want to do it.
Who are you surprising? So
Mr. Married to a strict narrative structure and chronological storytelling 95% of the time, but here we are.
I didn't realize we were going to go through the entire history of each build of each match.
Okay, we haven't. Some, yes, but this one kind of needs it. But
you
go
started
ahead.
the last match with, so there were territories, right? And so anyway, so the whole thing with this was Kevin Owens got injured, and so he couldn't do WrestleMania anymore, and they needed somebody for Randy Orton to wrestle. And going back to my comment about there was a period of time where it just felt like people running WWE were having an antagonistic relationship with the fans, and it was like if there was a clear answer, they always took a hard left into anything the fans would have hated with a passion. In fact, they always picked the things they hate the most. And so
we got a little bit of that in this match, believe it or not, but I'll talk about it in a minute.
So Joe Hendry showed up at the Royal Rumble, and he's a TNA. I don't know if he was TNA champion at the time, but he was a TNA guy. And it's great because, like, oh, look, the Forbidden Door is swinging. It's not only swinging in AEW, it's swinging in the WWE. This is cool. This makes it fun to be a fan, because then I used to say of ECW, the thing that made ECW what it was, at least one of them, was you really never knew what was going to happen on that show. There was always like a really weird surprise. And then during the height of the Attitude Era, what made the Attitude Era so much fun for fans was you really never knew how that show was going to go or what was going to happen. They assigned the low-hanging fruit badge of Crash TV to it, but I think Crash TV misses what was really fun about Raw, and that was the unpredictability of it all. So when wrestling became way predictable and overly predictable, and sometimes predictable to the point just to piss the fans off, I lost interest in the product. So it was nice to see Joe Hendry show up at the Royal Rumble, and then here we go to this Randy Orton match, and it's like, part of me is like, they're going to pick Savio Vega. So that joke. Savio Vega became the WWE's kind of go-to guy to ruin fan expectation. Like, if they needed a guy to fill in, and it was like, oh, clearly it's going to be this person, it's got to be that person, it was always Savio Vega. So I'm like, all right, so it's going to end up being Savio Vega here, or Rey Mysterio at the end of the Royal Rumble. Ugh, poor Rey. I've never seen a luchador cry. In any case,
it's because you don't watch enough Lucha Libre.
So the obvious choice here was Joe Hendry or MJF if they could have gotten him. One of the two.
I'm gonna counter that slightly, but that's a whole other thing.
So there, or Jericho. That would have been, Jericho would have made slightly more sense, but
Jericho would have been terrible.
Well, he's fat, but my point is, like,
and doesn't put anyone over.
He's currently in AEW. It would have been fun to see him show up and like, oh, look, Forbidden Door. And he's familiar with the WWE style, and everybody knows him. MJF would have been fun because he's never been in the WWE, and everyone thinks he should be, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with Jericho. But if you're not going to do somebody from AEW, then who do you do that's from another company that would have been fun? And the answer is, Joe Hendry. But I was like, ooh, are they going to pull that trigger? Are they going to do Savio Vega and piss me off and make me hate this product? Or are they going to give the fans what they want and out walks Joe Hendry? And not since the Io Sky win were me and my kids like that into WrestleMania. We were singing in the living room. We all believed in Joe Hendry. It was like palpable excitement and rapture in my living room watching this thing, which is what you want when you're doing a wrestling product. Tag in.
Okay, so this match goes like what, 3 minutes?
Yes, 3 minutes, 10 seconds.
Okay. I didn't rate this match because I don't have an appropriate rating for the opposite of a dud. You might think the opposite of a dud is not a 5-star match. A dud is something that like fundamentally misfires and fails to achieve its goal. This was the opposite of that. You were trying to pull something out of your hat. I can understand going with Joe Hendry. I really can. There was a bit of a movement for Karrion Kross to get this spot.
Mm-hmm.
He's a native from Las Vegas. That's where he did all of his beginning wrestling.
He's on the roster.
Yeah. And the only thing that came up for him to do was show up briefly in AJ versus Logan Paul,
and nag AJ Styles.
More on that in a minute. So there was a bit of an organic push for Kross to get this spot, and I can see the argument for that. That said, if Kross was going to come out, he and Randy would have had to have a real match.
Yeah.
With Joe Hendry, God bless him, you can do 3 minutes.
Yeah. First of all, look at if you watch that match, look at Joe Hendry's size and musculature compared to Randy Orton. It was like, your kid brother. And Joe Hendry's a reasonably sized guy, but Randy Orton's huge.
Joe Hendry is very strong, but he's got like power lifter build instead of model build.
So here's the thing. And I was thinking about this as you were talking, but I want to make this point for the audience's sake. A couple of years back, there was a guy called Fandango. And Fandango would come out and he would dance. And
do you mean Fandango?
Fandango. And here's the thing. WWE being autistic at the time. People started fandangoing as a way of protesting the shitty product. They weren't getting what they wanted. They were bored. They could feel the antagonism in the relationship. So they were just kind of doing their own shit. And I believe this was like the night after a particularly bad WrestleMania. So everyone's fandangoing. And then, like, the bad take from the fandangoing is, Fandango was popular. No. Fandango was not popular. Fandangoing was popular. And it's only popular because the man children in the audience hate your fucking product. That's why.
Yeah, look,
okay, if you need a current thing, chicken jockey. Fandangoing was chicken jockey before chicken jockey.
Well, about 4 years after Fandangoing, chanting CM Punk became the protest. It wasn't that CM Punk was the best thing since sliced bread. It was he wasn't here anymore. And the audience echoed a lot of his gripes with the company, so we chant CM Punk as a protest to what's going on in front of us.
So part of like being at a wrestling event, for those who are like watching me because they like me or watching you because they like me, but
I'm not even going to dispute it.
but don't really know anything about wrestling is the interactiveness of it all. Like if you go to, if you watch other sports, as other things people do, they throw towels around, they do chants. There's a whole thing that happens in different sports with different teams. With wrestling,
they have cheerleaders. They have cheerleaders for this purpose.
With wrestling, anything that you can sing along to, anything that produces a dance of some kind, a movement among the fans. So the thing of it is Joe Hendry has a way catchy catchphrase. Theme song, say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. People, it's fucking memeable. There's a doctor at where I used to work that had a picture of it on his computer. I don't even think he likes wrestling, but everyone knows fucking Joe Hendry now. So it doesn't really matter if he wins or loses or looks good in the match. Who gives a fuck? He was there to produce that moment, and then after that is, who gives a shit? And only the people who it's still real to them or think that like wins and losses and long matches matter, the Meltzer people, the Young Bucks crowd, cared how long that match was or how shitty he looked in that match. It didn't matter. He was there to pop a stadium full of people so that everyone could sing, I believe in Joe Hendry, and then you get in, you get out before anyone's going to miss you, and we're moving on to the next thing. That match was perfect. I mean, it wasn't really a match, but as far as a moment goes, it was as perfect a moment as you're going to have at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and look, the fact that Joe Hendry himself came out earlier today and said, no, that wasn't a squash match.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
The offense went back and forth. It didn't last long, but it went back and forth, and I lost.
Motherfuckers are reacting like he's SD Jones in there. There's a reference.
That's a reference, and it's a bit of a meme for the AEW crowd, and I'm not going to go into it.
Really? SD Jones? WrestleMania 3 or whatever it was with King Kong Bundy? That's an AEW thing now?
No, whatever Jones is an AEW meme.
So years and years and years ago, SD Jones got beat within seconds by, I think it was King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
That's a squash.
Yeah, that, and well, again, so it's a thing that, commentary in AEW does, especially Taz. He'll refer to something as, or a guy who's like in the crowd dressed up as like, oh, that's Refrigerator Jones over there.
Okay.
Or that kind of thing.
There was a real special delivery Jones once upon a time.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware, but
Okay.
But no, he didn't get squashed. In fact, again, that he had to come out and say, no, it wasn't a squash match. Yeah, it didn't go that long. You know who else has had a wrestling match at WrestleMania that didn't go very long and he lost in the end of it? John Cena.
Yeah.
So what? I'm too good for that now? Like, no.
I was gonna say, you want to get a better, version of that. Daniel Bryan and fucking pasty white Irish guy, Sheamus.
Well, that's a worse version for a lot of reasons. But
oh my god, that one that kicked off WrestleMania in Miami. I was there with Melissa at the time, and I remember like seriously thinking about driving back to Tampa.
You probably should have. You would have beat the traffic and not missed anything of value that night. That was a terrible event.
Well, no, that was the Hell in the Cell with Shawn, Taker, and Triple H.
Oh, right. I only put that one.
Good.
That was a good match. Okay, yeah. That one you should have left after that match.
All right, speaking of when I should have left, Logan Paul defeated AJ Styles by pinfall. This was 20 minutes and probably about 10 minutes too long. And this one, AJ Styles. So I don't know if I said it to you or if I said it to some. No, I said it during the West Wing podcast. It's really hard sometimes, and I'm sure I'm going to say this to you, and you're going to laugh and then cry. Having to run as slow as the dumbest person, run as slow as the slowest person, or intellectually be as slow as the slowest person. And for AJ Styles, who's one of the best wrestlers on the planet, to have to slow down so that Logan Paul can catch up with him was fucking painful to watch.
Yeah, this is 2.5 stars for me. Logan was always going over because AJ. Look, Logan's a pretty decent professional wrestler in a lot of respects, but he's also like there 3 months out of the year.
Yeah, no, I had no problem with him going over. AJ Styles has been around for. AJ Styles can take a loss.
Yeah,
Styles, a couple of years ago, AJ Styles was in a graveyard with the Undertaker. He'll be fine.
Yeah, AJ. This doesn't hurt AJ at all.
Yeah.
The story here is Killer Cross. Karrion Kross. Killer Kross. That's his older name because I'm doing Mark's gimmick. He's got me doing it too. Has been kind of getting in AJ's ear over the last little bit about, look, we don't need guys like Logan Paul here. You and I, guys like us, we busted our butts for years to get good at this, to become proficient in the craft of professional wrestling.
And this jackass, IWC.
Hang on. And this jackass with a YouTube channel comes in because he pops viral moments, and that's all the office cares about. Beat him, please. And AJ was like, I don't like you. So no, I will not stoop to your level when presented with the opportunity to cheat to win. I will not do this. And Cross went on the live reaction Sam Roberts podcast station that they had set up after this and cut the best promo he's cut in a long time. You can find it online if you're so inclined. It starts in character, and then by the end, it's a little bit I'm sure he got approval for the gist of the content, because this is again, he's not going on some random podcast. This is the official thing that they're doing. But by the end, he's clearly tapped into a little bit of his legitimate feelings about some of the direction of the company. So, yeah.
So then we have Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch.
Valkyria,
whatever. Defeating Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. This is fine. It's nice to see Becky Lynch back. Let me say this, because I am a little bit more in tune with the rest of humanity than you are. It was nice to see women in the crowd cry for Becky and to see her return. Did that portion of the crowd to be that connected with that particular woman, to have her come back, see those people filled with joy. I could give a fuck less about this match or anyone in it, but I was happy to see those women be that happy. That's my impression of this match. Your witness.
It's fine. I went 2.5 stars on it. So Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez win the tag titles from Naomi and Bianca Belair not too long ago, which is again to facilitate Bianca and Naomi breaking up and Jade coming back and that whole thing. This is a little bit after Liv lost the women's title to Rhea Ripley. And after their big personal feud when Liv stole Dominic Mysterio. Stealing is a bit strong for that, but, you can have him.
Hey, she likes her men dirty, don't we all?
No.
There's my one.
No. Anyway, so Liv and Raquel win the belts. They need a challenger. There's not a lot of women tag teams. So to figure out who it's going to be, they do a gauntlet match on SmackDown, which takes up the first hour of the broadcast. And they do without commercial breaks. And God bless them. It actually, if you don't have enough material for a 3-hour show, giving an hour to one kind of match to save yourself the headache of trying to stretch everything else out for the rest of the show is actually a good deal. And that match is won by, let me think who started that off. It starts with Lyra and Bayley is their makeshift tag team for those two. Those two go wire to wire. They beat everybody and win the whole thing to get the tag shot. Throughout the course of this, they beat Caden Carter and Katana Chance. They beat the Secret Hervis, which is the bodyguards for Chelsea Green because she's the U.S. champion, so she needs the Secret Service, but it's the Secret Hervis, and it's Alba Fire and Piper Niven. Beats Meechin and B-Fab, and there's one other team they beat, I think, but I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. So that gets them their title shot, and then Bayley gets pulled from the match to facilitate Becky Lynch returning, is kind of the long and the short of that. Lyra and Becky are both Irish. Lyra's a big fan of Becky, so it's a nice moment for them. Liv temporarily put Becky on hiatus earlier this year when she got the title, because she got it off of Becky, and then held it and fended off Rhea a couple of times, including Dom turning on Rhea, and then eventually Rhea beat her for it. But Becky's been out of action for a bit, so she comes back and wants revenge on Liv. Gets it, and all the nerds who mark out for Liv Morgan are like, how many more titles does this spastic ginger need to win? Who cares? It's fake. It was fine, but look, things start dipping after. Again, nothing quite hits the highs of the first match of night 2, but you kind of expect a little dip after a hot opener. The problem is it only seems to descend instead of ever regaining momentum.
Yeah.
And this match,
I will tell you, my daughter was fucking asleep by this point, and my son was mostly on his phone.
This was the match where I went, oh boy, we're in for a rough main event because that's next, and there's no energy left.
Do you remember when the match before the main event was the death spot? That's usually where they put the girls match, but the girls match that nobody cares about. Yeah,
the piss break. It comes right after whatever the hottest match is, and right before the next one. We want people to. You need it's called a come down match when you're not being pejorative about it. So I apologize for that. And it's something AEW could stand to use with their.
They should also not do 12-hour pay-per-views.
With their 12-match pay-per-view events that go on for 5 hours, and everything's at least 15 minutes. God bless Tony Storm and Mariah May for doing a 5-star match in less than 15 minutes. Best match on that pay-per-view with their Hollywood ending.
All right, so the next matches are finally our main event. It's the actual main event of the entire WrestleMania. It's the thing everyone's been building to. It's Cody Rhodes, versus John Cena, who's killing wrestling, which is a fantastic thing.
One can hope.
John Cena comes out. Cody Rhodes comes out. They have a wrestling match. Everything is a step off, which is weird because both guys know how to wrestle.
No. But... Hang on. This one I can explain. The others, I think it's age. This is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
This is John Cena deliberately trolling the audience.
Okay.
He is deliberately being slow.
People listening needed to hear me finish that sentence, though.
Okay.
So this whole thing is really methodical, a step off, super slow, very loose. It reminded me of the Randy Orton Triple H match after the home invasion.
In fairness, they did open that match trying to kill each other.
So it was one of those where I'm fine with your explanation that it was deliberate, and I will continue to let you explain it in just a minute. But for the people, the entire match felt off. The entire match felt like these two guys didn't mesh for whatever reason. There lacked an intensity to it for two people who, for the last 2 weeks of the build-up, Cody Rhodes kept hitting John Cena in the head, and John Cena kept saying, "I hate wrestling, I hate you, and I hate everything about this." So again, you would have expected a little bit more intensity, a little bit more heat, and this was a meal this was leftovers out of the fridge that you didn't even bother to reheat. And then John Cena, and then Travis Scott comes out, not The Rock. not Dustin Rhodes, not the ghost of Randy Savage. Nobody anyone cares about. They send out Travis Scott in the pig hostage role, and he does, poor interference. And then and Cody Rhodes goes to hit John Cena with the title, and he's not going to do it because he's a good man and godly and all of that. So John Cena says, "No, that's fine." Proceeds to kick him in the balls and hit him with the title. We have a couple of ref bumps because we must have ref bumps. And then that's it. John Cena beats him. And the best stuff of this match happened after, when John Cena was at the press conference telling everybody all their questions were clickbait, and that if you wanted to hear his answers, check out Raw, which I laughed my ass off at. All right, so why is John Cena trolling the audience as if the answers were not obvious?
Okay, here's the real problem with this match. Well, there's a couple. One, The Rock not showing up. He's kind of been the crux of this, and for him to just be absent after Elimination Chamber, boy, was that a miss. John Cena only being here for like 3 weeks after the big heel turn was also a miss. This thing cooled off in a hurry.
I mentioned that to Harry when we discussed it on the IndySiders. I said not having him come out at the end of the Elimination Chamber and explain himself was a giant misstep.
Yeah, and Cena wrestling this match like he's got a call time next week for a new movie. But the real problem here, Cody started getting booed a little bit the last couple of weeks when he's interacting with Cena. And on the mic, Cody could pull it back. And in fact, this last Monday, he did in a really brilliant way. He was being booed, trying to talk to John Cena, and he got the crowd back on his side, cheering him and booing John Cena. With a mic, he could do it. In the ring, neither of these guys was in a position.
It's 2025, and you still can't wrestle. Ouch.
Well, and if John Cena could wrestle, he could have made the people boo him, but that's another story. It's a meta story. The problem that they ran into here is, God, John Cena's been there for 25 years. And the switch flipped on John Cena as a heel stopped no longer being booed. I know when it happened. It happened about 2 weeks ago. I can tell you why it happened too, believe it or not. Because of everyone who is starting to show up to these build events, when you get close to WrestleMania, it's not the casual fans that start filling things. It's the hardcore fans. The casual fans still love Cody and hate John Cena. But you get a more hardcore audience the closer you get to WrestleMania and immediately after. And enough of the hardcore fans looked at each other and went, "Hey, didn't we ask for this forever? Aren't we getting what we asked for? Let's cheer it."
Because wrestling fans are assholes.
Yes. Yes, they are the worst. Almost the worst. MMA fans are the actual worst, but these guys are close.
Oh, I don't know. I'm starting to think anyone with an internet podcast on YouTube who talks about movies is the worst.
No, we're not the worst.
Oh, I wasn't counting us.
I'm not counting. Okay. You want to do this? Allow me to express to you the depravity of MMA fandom.
Oh, okay. That's what we're doing.
Bryce Mitchell.
20 words or less.
Bryce Mitchell said Adolf Hitler wasn't a bad guy until he got on meth, and I'd like to have gone fishing with him.
I don't know.
He was that.
That's okay.
He was then loudly cheered at his next fight. Your witness.
MMA fans and wrestling fans and internet jerks are all the same people.
Not as much as you might think.
Moving on.
So, moving on. The point being, and this is John Cena's last WrestleMania, and he's trying to make history, and there's enough like contrarian jackasses to kind of start a movement. And here's the other reason it caught on. Heel John Cena is interesting. He's interesting. He's not cool. He's not a cool heel.
Okay, I want to interject here because for the people, Max Landis, I've mentioned it before. It's so good, it's worth mentioning every once in a while. Did a short movie called Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. And he has all the girls playing wrestlers. And he talks about like the history of pro wrestling and why fans enjoy it through the rough history of Triple H. And again, all the girls play the different wrestling characters, including Triple H. When he gets to John Cena, and he's talking about like what the issues with John Cena are vis-a-vis Triple H. The girl playing John Cena, first of all, is this cutie patootie blonde, just the most adorable looking blonde, and she is doing the exact mannerisms as John Cena. But it's what he's saying about John Cena in the video is nothing hurts John Cena. John Cena doesn't seem to care about anything. Everything just kind of washes off his shoulders like water off a duck's back. And it's kind of hard to get invested in a character when the character himself never seems to be in peril and doesn't care about anything or doesn't react to anything. And the whole time is smiling in a way that seems patronizing. And he's saying all of this, and then there's the girl just kind of, and the whole thing that sells it, that really brings home what Max Landis is saying about John Cena, is the shrugging. Like, eh. And that's why a lot of people didn't like John Cena for the longest time. It didn't matter about the wrestling. It didn't matter about anything else. It didn't matter how often he won. It was even Hulk Hogan at his most Hulk Hoganiness felt like he was in peril at times and things mattered to him. And nothing seems to have mattered to John Cena until now. And what matters to John Cena is that he tried to do everything for the fans, and the fans never accepted him, and he doesn't know why, which is hilarious to me. Back to you.
Well, John Cena, even as a face, like that, the shift happened for John Cena previous iteration, which was 20 years of him being a good guy. It started happening when he made a concerted effort to like work with younger talent to showcase other people. And then once he became a bit more part-time, the fact that his gimmick was actually just, you're stupid, your gimmick sucks, and you're bad at this, prove me wrong, and nobody could. I mean,
the graveyard, the graveyard of guys that he did that with. Roman Reigns.
To be fair, when it was true of Roman Reigns.
Yeah, it was the I told Putty Tat era Roman Reigns. Austin Butler, Aries.
Theory.
There we go. Austin Theory. God, who else?
Was true of Theory, by the way.
Yeah.
Did it to Solo Sikoa, kind of.
Yeah.
Like anytime he'd start off a promo with fine speech after what you just said to him, you knew he was just going to go, you suck at this. I don't. You're bad at your job. Your gimmick's dumb. And these people don't love you.
Oh,
now again, prove me wrong.
His thing with The Miz was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Because, Miz sucks, but I kid.
I'll tell you what, though. The Miz's promo when he was walking through the locker room and everything, and he's talking about getting kicked out of the locker room for eating chicken.
Oh, boo-hoo.
There were two Miz moments I'll never forget. That's one of them, and the other one of him going crazy on Daniel Bryan when Daniel Bryan called him a coward. Oh, that was good shit. Two great, authentic Miz moments.
Yeah, look, here's the other thing. If you want to know, like, the fact that The Miz still talks about being kicked out of the locker room for, a brief period of time for behaving a bit like a jackass. Like he's got PTSD and survived the Bosnian Purge or some shit like that.
We are at 2 hours. Get back to the match.
But John Cena is getting cheered because heel John Cena is interesting, and most of the WWE product isn't. I'm not saying it's bad. Let me be clear. It's not bad, but the bloodline stuff with Roman was interesting because Roman was doing character work like we don't usually see. That was interesting. But Jay and Gunther, they're not interesting. They're good. Again, Jay's over because he's a likable guy, and Gunther's a great worker. But it's not really interesting.
Apparently, babies like to do this thing.
Yeah, of course.
If you're really young, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you won't throw your shoulder out doing it. It's fun if you won't throw your shoulder out doing it. I'm making an old joke.
Oh,
that's why I don't do it.
Okay, got it. Okay, now I'm with you now.
So it's fun for the young people.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you can count on one hand the number of genuinely interesting characters in the WWE right now. There's not a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like, CM Punk is not interesting. You can be compelled by him. You can enjoy what he does, but like, it's CM Punk. He's doing the CM Punk thing. Seth Rollins has been doing the same thing I mentioned for like 12 years at this point. He's not interesting. Heel John Cena is kind of interesting, and being interesting in the landscape of WWE right now is currency that you can't buy. So yeah, he started to get cheered by people who want to be interested in what's going on. And Cena going over was not the problem here, believe it or not. The fact that the match was what it was. Again, I think John Cena wrestled very slowly, trying to get people to boo him because he couldn't do his stuff at normal speed because they'll just cheer for him more. So doing it slow was like what else can you do? He did everything a heel's supposed to do. He was a coward. Look at all the times he avoided contact.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do big, exciting moves. He worked.
You know what? He took all the right lessons from Ric Flair.
He did. And he worked as slow as he could without it being. You can work slow and be engaging, and he pushed that line as far as he could. You're right about there not being intensity between the two of them, and I don't know who to blame more for that, because you can do slower but intense work. This just lacked that for whatever reason. So that's a bit of the problem. It didn't need quite as much time as it got. Speaking of, that's another of my big gripes with the triple threat from night 2 was that did not need 30 plus minutes.
Can I add this element to it? Last year, I didn't watch all of night 2. I was out.
You were out.
Yeah. But I watched, as I was driving home from being out, I watched the last bit of Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns.
It's been called the best 5 minutes in wrestling history.
Yeah. Where everybody, it was Daffy pitching the Scarlet Pumpernickel.
Yeah,
everything fucking happens at the end of that match. It's almost as like wrestling should have ended after that. It was never going to get any better than that last bit of that match.
That was their end game, right?
Yeah.
That was their Avengers end game, and now we're unfortunately in Phase 4 of the MCU.
Yeah,
we're still keeping that comparison.
Unfortunately, Cody Rhodes versus John Cena was Black Widow. It was like, how do you follow
more like Black Panther, but
how do you follow the best thing ever? You can't. But I don't know if everyone else, feels that way. Like in other words, I think there's an expectation of, well, it's John Cena and it's Cody Rhodes and it's a year after the best night in the history of professional wrestling. Made poor Michael Cole feel like he was young, like when the world was new.
Yeah.
And there was no way they were ever going to be better than that. It's a shame on you for asking them, but that doesn't mean that people didn't want that or expect it or be disappointed when it didn't happen.
Look, like you said, you're never going to get that again. We didn't have to go so far in the other direction that everyone's disappointed. Yeah. And look, anyone who was just like, yay, John Cena broke Ric Flair's record. Yay, we like John Cena. Okay.
Let me give you another analog.
I don't. Go ahead.
I have said, because Pat and I traced the entire history of WrestleMania from WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 20 before we decided to end that podcast. And I have read a lot of the lists on 401 Mania. I have read Larry Zonka's stuff, the late Larry Zonka. And I said on the podcast at the time, I said WrestleMania 2 with Hogan and King Kong Bundy is maligned unfairly. It is a perfectly good match. It was the second WrestleMania. They were doing something interesting with 3 different venues. They had a lot of fun stuff on there, like Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and whatever.
That was not fun.
Oh, shut up. But here's the thing. Hogan, King Kong Bundy, good match for what it was at the time. When you put the expectation on it that King Kong Bundy versus Hulk Hogan should be just as good, if not better, than Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Chris Benoit, you're a crazy person. Perspective is key here. And I think that you have to judge each match in exclusion of everything else, or nothing's ever going to be satisfying for you. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena was not my favorite match of all time, but, especially with your explanation of it, it makes more sense to me now than it did before. It was fine. When I watched it, I was like, oh, I wish this has been more intense, but it was fine. But I can't be like, it didn't make me feel, but it didn't make me feel like the last one did with Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. Well, it shouldn't have to live up to that, is my point. It should be its own thing.
Here's my brief counter to that. Very brief.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine taking this match on its own terms. I am not going to compare it to WrestleMania 40. I could compare it to 39, but that was a good match. Even taken on its own terms, there's problems with this. There's the lack of intensity, which again, I think is a thing they could have done better at. Then there's the giant disappointment of Travis Scott.
Yeah, that's the. If I'm gonna be like, if you please take the wrestling fan side, or we'll kill ourselves tonight. Yeah, I don't. Travis Scott's a nobody who, he's not a part of this. He came out with The Rock once, and everyone went, "Who's that?" It was funny. People's reaction to Travis Scott was like my kids watching me react to Cardi B and me going, "Is that Megan Thee Stallion?" And then I wouldn't let it go. So every time they showed Cardi B, I was like, "Is that Lil Kim? Is that Kim Kardashian?"
Okay, Lil Kim is a reference not like your kids would not get.
They were like, "Who?" At one point I was like, "Is that Lil Yachty?" I know which is a guy, but at one point I really did have a brief old man yells at cloud moment in my house as I'm screaming, "Who's Lil Yachty?" And my kids are like giving me Thorazine. They're like, "Calm down, old man." It was an interesting time in my house, but yeah, Lil Yachty, Lil Kim, Lil Bow Wow, little people. There's so many littles. I know a girl who's into mumble rap. Apparently, there's a little baby.
That is not a person you should associate with.
I won't be shortly, but she got me on a little baby. Little baby. He's on a little Yachty with little Kim.
And you complain about the length of these podcasts.
Oh, fuck you! Listen to your lecture like I was a fucking TED Talk I didn't want to come to. I do a 2-minute bit. People are on the floor laughing at me. Yeah, go ahead, Khrushchev. Talk to me again about.
So look, let me the big letdown here. 1, Travis Scott. 2, no Rock. The Rock's presence, it feels like it.
Do the thing at Elimination Chamber and then not have the Rock to pay.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Look, the Rock's. It feels like the Rock upended the apple cart here.
Yeah.
It feels like he mandated. I mean, look, he was supposed to wrestle Roman at WrestleMania 40. That was supposed to be The Rock and Roman. The Rock was going to go over and retire as champion. Was actually the story. Then the fans revolted, as they should have. Dude, if it had just been the online fans that were pissed after Cody said, Roman, when I come after you, I'm coming for everything, but I'm not coming for you at WrestleMania, and then The Rock comes out. Because the live crowd for that popped big, because it's Alabama and it's The Rock. But the internet got real pissy about that, like, what the hell? Deservedly so. But if it had stayed online, they would have held the course. The fact that the next Monday Night Raw, the fans hijacked it with "We Want Cody" chants was not an accident.
Well, look, if you're going, here's the thing. Everything was pointing to Cody versus Roman that year, and to go away from it was stupid.
Yeah, but The Rock is on the board. It was the logic.
I hear you, but then Again,
I
we're
don't
going,
disagree
James
with you
Storm,
at all.
James Storm, and we don't do it. And then we wonder why fans get pissy at wrestling.
I don't disagree with you, but so yeah, The Rock, it feels like he upended the apple cart. It felt like we were heading a little bit more towards like Cody and Randy here because, they've got all that rich history. We could have done Rock and Roman maybe because, again, we've been teasing that for a while. And now that Roman has fallen off his perch at Tribal Chief, losing to The Rock to be the catalyst for him changing his persona could track. Like, it feels like there was another version of this card that was put forward, and then The Rock kind of upended things. And we put together what we put together. And again, The Rock not showing up was a big miss. Travis Scott in general is a miss.
Yeah, in storytelling terms, again, I've talked about the studies that show that if you don't have a consistent narrative, even toddlers won't follow you. If The Rock's whole thing is Cody Rhodes, sell me your soul, I am the devil. And Cody Rhodes says, no, my soul belongs to the people, I have no soul to sell. And he says, well, that's fine. I have found this Aryan fellow who will kill you.
Yes.
And the Aryan fellow says, I will sell my soul, and that's fantastic. I enjoy Aryan souls. And so then John Cena then kills Cody Rhodes. Shouldn't The Rock have been there
in some capacity
to fuck Cody Rhodes so then John Cena wins and they can walk out skipping arm in arm together? Like, that's what everyone was paying good money for. That would have made sense. So you send out, Little Yachty, and who gives a fuck?
Yeah, there's a way to have done this better, and they just hit every pothole possible.
Or Kool Mo D had to have showed up well before this and been a part of this feud.
Yeah, but
Kool Mo D was a rapper.
I understand from context clues what was going on there.
I'm gonna keep doing that. Keep going.
I understand.
Okay.
Look, the problem is, like, if Travis Scott shows up early or some other wrestler just gives him the receipt he deserves.
Well, again, you weave a story so that Too Short can contribute, and so that way when Ice Cube finally hits Cody Rhodes in the end, it makes a little bit more sense when he's coming in like, oh no, here comes Ice-T, and everyone's like, oh, he's been here the whole time, this evil rapper, this evil rapper, Grandmaster Flash.
If he's Pac-Man Jones.
Oh, I miss Pac-Man Jones.
There every week, but not able to actually wrestle because no contact clause in his contract with an NFL team.
Pac-Man Jones had a great theme.
It wasn't bad, and him teaming with R-Truth was.
Yeah. Anyway, let's wrap this
TNA,
up.
Everybody. So we get a very lackluster ending to a disappointing match after a string of downhill matches for night 2. And look, the general consensus about this seems to be as follows. Night 1 was a mediocre night with a good main event. Night 2 was a good card with a disappointing main event. And I don't completely agree with that personally because I'm me, but I understand where they're coming from.
So here's my thoughts on WrestleMania. I like wrestling, not all the time, but well enough that I will demand to have my children on weekends and not mine so that I can watch it with them. Which is really all that matters to me at this point, is that it's something for me to experience with my kids. I enjoy their reactions to things when they react to things. As for my own reactions and my own thoughts about wrestling, I mean, some stuff I'm engaged with, some stuff I'm completely disengaged with. If I can have one or two brief moments of joy, I'm going to call it a successful night. And I had it. Io Sky winning the first match brought me joy. The stuff with CM Punk and Roman Reigns, and I laughed. I wouldn't say brought me joy, but I was amused. And so, and nothing on it was so dreadfully bad that I wanted to throw my child through the television, which was not the case a few years ago with wrestling. So, all in all, not the best WrestleMania I've ever seen, not the worst, squarely in the middle somewhere.
This is like bottom. It's bottom half for sure. I'm not sure if it's bottom third.
You know what it reminds me of? The one where they were in Arizona.
Okay. Trying to remember that one.
I think is CM Punk and Jericho. That is also, I think, one of the iterations between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker.
WrestleMania, Arizona. Hang on. It's 26.
Yeah. Like, I really distinctly remember that one just being, like, the most okayest of okay.
26 is... No, 26... Okay, 26 has some real duds, but hang on. So 26 starts with Miz and Big Show beating John Morrison and R-Truth. Randy Orton beats Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase.
Oh, gosh. This is entirely saved by The Undertaker beating Shawn Michaels in the Streak versus Career match.
Not entirely. There's two other good parts here. The Money in the Bank ladder match that Jack Swagger wins is okay. Or okay to good. Triple H and Sheamus is fine. Not great, but fine. Ray and CM Punk is... It's too short. It's only 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes. Where things go off the rails is Bret Hart versus Vince McMahon.
Oh, God, that was a poorly thought out plan.
It would have been fine if it was 5 minutes instead of 11. Jericho and Edge is okay, but slightly misplaced on the card. John Cena and Batista was actually pretty good. For 13 minutes, they did some good work. And then, yeah, Taker and Michaels.
What year was Punk and fucking Jericho?
Hang on.
I'm going through them now, and I'm like,
28.
Okay. What year is that?
That's the one headlined by Rock and Cena once in a lifetime that turned into twice in a lifetime. It's 2012.
Oh, yeah, it's what I'm looking at now. Okay. Then I'm misremembering. But yeah, I remember the one in Arizona just being kind of blah. And now that I'm looking at that, it was entirely saved, like I said, by Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker.
For the most part. Again, there were some other decent matches, but that was the only one that was, like, really good.
I feel like the feud between Cena and Batista was better than the actual match.
Yeah, probably. But again, their match there was good. Yeah. Not great. It was good. It was a good lead into Taker and Michaels. But
all right. So anyway,
yeah, this is probably like near bottom third for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's
I'll tell you what the problem is.
It's a badly managed 2 nights.
I want you to go back to 1998, 99.
Okay.
Where every WWE pay-per-view feels like an event. Like this is peak Austin era. In fact, 98 is the Austin era. It's the WrestleMania and 14 is 1998. It's in Boston. It's where he beats Michaels and Mike Tyson is there and all of that.
Yeah.
It's the while the Attitude Era had really started in 97, this is the kickoff to the Austin era, which might as well have been the whole Attitude Era.
The Austin era fizzles. We get the McMahon Helmsley era for a bit after Austin gets hurt again.
Every pay-per-view feels like must-see TV. Like I remember during the 2-year run of Austin Austin having the title and feuding with McMahon and subsequently The Rock.
You mean that thing they've been trying to recapture for 20 years?
Yeah. Every show was like you knew they weren't necessarily going to, and they even took the title off Austin once or twice during all of that, just to make it interesting. But I mean, I remember there being a palpable sense of like
25 years.
You were truly engaged with what was happening in the product. You were engaged in all the stories. Every pay-per-view felt like an event, and when it was over, you're like, I can't wait for Raw tomorrow. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And then when Raw would end, the longest night of the week was 11:03. Because it was the longest time between when Raw ended and when Raw would begin again. And my problem with wrestling now, my problem with this WrestleMania is this WrestleMania feels like just another event. This could have been Raw. This could have been SmackDown. This could have been Clash in Paris. This could have been In Your House. This could have been Stand and Deliver. Whatever name you slap on it, the only thing that's changing is the building and the atmosphere. Ultimately, none of these feel tremendously special. Like none of them make me feel like the way that 2-year period did. That's how long ago it was before I even felt that way. I mean, there was occasionally a storyline here or there. Like I mentioned, the Shield, the Daniel Bryan stuff, but I mean, like a 2-year run where every month was like that, every week was like that. Not in a very long time. And so I look at this WrestleMania and go like, it's more meaningful to me because it's something I can share with my kids than it is the actual event itself and the content therein.
Yeah. So Mania post-COVID has generally been a bit more hit than miss. Because last year felt like a big deal. So 40 felt like a big deal. 39 felt like a big deal. 38 struggled.
I will say the one in Tampa.
Yeah,
after
that's the one
lo-
where Roman beat Edge and Brian Danielson.
But
in the
that
main event.
also was like we were just getting that felt less like about wrestling and more about like we're glad COVID's over.
Yeah, like that was the one where like Vince came out to start it and went, "Where the hell have you all been?"
Yeah. And then we kind of struggle in the middle, and then we get to Cody and Roman. But all right,
Yeah. So this was again not very good, and there's some good stuff to be had, but man, when your ending's a damp squib like that, it's a real downer.
wrestling kind of like a trail mix with some M&Ms in there.
It's a bad trail mix, and the problem is, half of them are M&Ms, half of them are not.
All right, well, folks, that is Damn You Hollywood Wrestling Edition. It's really what this was.
I need to do this real briefly because I don't get to talk wrestling very often.
I can tell.
You and I, if we ever do this again, and you seem annoyed, so it's unlikely.
Robert, I'm always annoyed. I'm perpetually annoyed.
I understand. You're perpetually annoyed. I'm perpetually disappointed. We make a good pair. It's great. But I have become so sick of people doing wrestling as cinema that I'm so tempted to start reviewing wrestling like a movie. You want to claim this is cinema? How about I hold it to that standard and let's see what happens?
People have seen what we do to movies. No one wants us to do that to wrestling.
I can't tell you how tempted I've been in my like bitter moments to pitch to the editor to one of my editors at 411 like, let me create a fake byline and let me review wrestling like a movie. Like, you want to, wrestling is cinema. Well, it's real bad. Here's all the ways it's bad. Here's all the production things that are bad. Here's the acting things that are bad. Here's the storyline inconsistencies that are like, just do it like that, just for the negative traffic.
It's like you show up at a wedding. Like, does anyone here have a reason these two should not wed? Yes, I do. I am Robert Winfree. Have you seen TikTok lately? Well, first of all, sir, do you understand that in 2 years you'll become bored? Feel like, because he gets Instagram likes, he should leave you and take half your stuff? Next page. And
wouldn't hang on. If I'm going to list reasons why I think someone shouldn't get married, I'm not going to do generic manosphere bullshit.
God, I wish you would, because some of the other guys doing it's like, if this one
you
guy,
think I'd do it better than
you do it better than them. You wouldn't. So there's this one guy. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Then I'm taking us out of here.
Yeah.
This is one guy. It's men only, and
that's terrible.
Yeah, the girl will do a TikTok, and it's like, what I don't understand is, where are all the men these days? Are they in trees? Are they at home? I don't understand. And then he goes, this woman literally is asking where the men are. Yes, fuckface, we heard her. You don't need to say she's literally, like, he's doing bridging narrative as if he's like interpreting what she's saying, and she's literally saying, you're literally repeating her, asshole. What is English not your first language? Probably not.
So, and yet he gets, thousands of likes and millions of views.
You're not kidding. I struggle. All right. Speaking of struggling, that is our review. Wednesday.
The show was a struggle, and what we reviewed was a struggle. And you know what? Overcoming struggle makes us all better.
Speaking of overcoming a struggle, we got a double dose of the IndySiders here. The proper IndySiders will be back. It'll be myself and Harry Broadhurst, and we'll be looking at the collective Las Vegas recap 2025. I actually watched all the shows this year, kind of.
Hey, Brody Lee Jr. tapped out Joey Janela with an ankle lock.
Outstanding. And then
about the best use of Joey Janela possible.
And then we have a triple feature this Thursday. It'll be myself, Mac Kenter, Mick Wanamaker, and Dorian Price. We're looking at romances. We're going to Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, The Lifeless, which I really enjoyed and I'm excited to talk about, and La Dolce Villa, which was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was actually quite fun. So romantic comedies and romances and dramas, that's what we're doing. It's a streaming catch-up. That's what we're doing there.
Woohoo!
Nothing this weekend. Sunday is another streaming catch-up, but this time we are focusing on shitty action movies. We've got Daisy Ridley in The Cleaner.
Just don't.
I watched it earlier.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
We did the Sylvester Stallone movie that's got a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes, Alarum. And then if you enjoy 60-year-old Michelle Obama inserts running around doing action stuff in what's possibly the most funniest unintentional comedy of this year,
the G20.
Check out our review of G20, and that'll be myself, Dorian Price, and Jesse Starcher, by God.
You guys are... Dorian's going to tap out halfway through. You and Jesse are going to get drunk on air.
Probably. Speaking of getting drunk on air, myself and Robert Winfree and Dorian Price again, for some strange reason, will be doing The Electric State. So yes, well after everyone else has buried this movie, we are going to dig it up and bury it again.
We're not going to dig it up. We're gonna start building. We are going to move the headstone somewhere else and build a development over the top of that graveyard where it's buried.
Speaking of zombies, myself and Alexis Hayne are going to review The Bondsman starring Kevin Bacon. That was a 4-hour movie that some people are calling a television show.
Is that any good?
It's all right.
I was tempted to watch it.
It's kind of, it's definitely like in the Ash versus Evil Dead hysteria, Alexis Hayne wheelhouse.
Okay, so I will probably enjoy it then. I might check that out.
But then we've got 2 more triple features to end off the week. I'm busy this week, next week rather. Shay Tate and I and Dorian Price will be doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Little Shop of Horrors, and Jekyll and Hyde the Musical starring David Hasselhoff. And then this was supposed to be done last year, but scheduling is a thing. So Pat and I will be doing the fun High School's in Trouble movies. The Substitute, The Principal, and 187 on an Undercover Cop. And finally, Chris Bailey. That is all my plugs. Robert, please do not take 5 hours to do your plugs.
I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com, WWE SmackDown on Fridays. I occasionally get called in to pinch hit on other things. Again, I almost wound up covering Stand and Deliver. Timing didn't work out. Thankfully, my editors are very cool about that as long as I give them enough notice. They asked, I said yes, because there was no UFC event on that Saturday. And then scheduling changed for me. I had something else. Again, my friend going for his black belt, and I needed to be on his test. So I wound up doing that instead. I will be covering this week again SmackDown, UFC on ESPN 66. They are in Kansas City, and good main event. Ian Machado, Gary, and Carlos Praches. If you want a full breakdown and predictions, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Find that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And this week I talk about that and why the UFC has not yet announced the main event for International Fight Week.
What's holding them up? What's holding them up?
Well, a few people are waiting to see how the next pay-per-view plays out before they talk about. Mostly this is Aslam Makhachev, because he doesn't really want to fight Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria only wants to fight for a belt. Charles Oliveira only wants to fight for the belt. Makhachev is also half waiting to see what happens between Bilal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena, because if Jack Della Maddalena wins, he might move up and fight him for the welterweight belt. The featherweight belt was just contested. We don't know if we're ever going to get John Jones and Tom Aspinall. There's been no movement on that front. And Dricus du Plessis seems to have picked up a minor injury that's going to prevent him from fighting on that card. So DDP and Khamzat Chimaev is not really available. And already announced for that card is a co-main event, presumably, of the flyweight title fight between Alexandre Pantoja and Kai Kara France. They just don't have any big fights readily available for that bout, for that event.
Alrighty, well.
It's a mess.
Thank you for joining us on this more or less impromptu edition of the IndySiders. This was Damn You Hollywood with a fucking with a lucha mask on.
Damn You Connecticut.
Sorry.
Stanford. It's got to be the city. Damn You Stanford.
Damn You Stanford. That's what I should have called this tonight. All right.
Alternately, Damn You Jacksonville when we happen to be covering AEW if we ever do.
All right, folks. For Robert Winfree, I have to find a pen so I can notate this check. Be well, be safe, and behave.